And I don't remember my codes.
There he is, he's getting hot.
Half the cheat sheets are, which probably
We need
defeats
1
the
minute,
purpose of
right,
having
before we
code.
start. Yeah, let's not break.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Would you please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon once again, and welcome everyone in the audience and those listening via the internet. Today is a special school board meeting being held this evening, beginning at 5:30. I would like to begin the meeting by introducing the people that are around me this afternoon, and starting with Miss Linda Cuthbert from District 3. Next to Miss Cuthbert from District 5, Mr. Ruben Colon. Next to Mr. Colon, our school board attorney, Mr. Ted Doran. Our agency clerk on the far right, your left, is Ms. Connie Spire, our agency clerk, as I said, from District 1. Ms. Jamie Haynes, our superintendent, is next to me, Mr. Tim Egner. My name is Carl Persis. I'm serving as the chair this year, and I represent District 4. Items for approval on this agenda are items 6.01 and 6.02. There is a public participation time, of course, which will be at our public hearing later on this evening. Our items today are really, we have two major ones we're going to get into. The first is the superintendent search process, which we are cranking up now. We've had a couple of meetings concerning this, and then after that item, we're going to move into a presentation about our professional standards process. So, with us today, we have folks from the Florida School Board Association, and since we're on the internet, if you'd be kind enough to introduce yourselves and your title, and we'll get underway. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, afternoon, board members. I'm John Reichert, a consultant with the Florida School Board Association.
Bill Vogel, a consultant with the Florida School Board Association.
And John and Bill, if you could just pull those microphones a little bit closer to you, and we'll try to get that volume up so everyone can hear. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Shall I begin?
Yes, you shall.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you, and we're very happy to be here to kind of get the meat of the process underway in our superintendent search here in Volusia. Also, hopefully you have all the documents that I'd sent to the clerk to the board in your packet. And what I would like to start with to address is our revised timeline from last week. That timeline, there are some modifications to it. Of course, we have some items today at our July 30th meeting that we want to run over, and we'll kind of go with those in order as they appear to the right. But I would like to kind of run through the rest of the timeline. As you recall, we eliminated the August 5th meeting from the last timeline and substituted in that for the August 20th meeting. There are some things there that we will be looking to bring back on August 20th, and based on your input today regarding several items, there may be an additional item or two to add to that August 20th meeting. August 30th, there'll be a press release that we're working on with staff to kind of announce the superintendent search online portal that will be available for all members of the employees of the district and members of the Volusia County community to keep abreast of the process, the search, and events as we move through the process. That press release will also announce the community forums that hopefully we can finalize dates today, and also the online survey that we'll present to you for discussion as one of the items that we'll talk about today that will be up and going online August 23rd. August 26th is our application period begins. So those persons who are interested in applying for the position here in Volusia to be the next superintendent, that will begin on August 26th. You will note, if compared to the last timeline we had, this is an earlier starting date by about 4 days. So I had to kind of make a 2 or 3 days adjustment on the advertisement period so that I could work in your advisory committee meetings that were needed. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Ms. Haynes. I'm
So,
sorry.
Actually, on the community forum, I know that they agreed on the east side to share and do 2, and we were looking at 2 on this side, and I think where the confusion was is when I said to Mr. Cologne, so could we share on this south end? So we actually need 2 on this end, or on this side of the county also, so we need a total of 4. And you only have 3 listed there. I was just looking at sending, oh, there is,
No, ma'am.
okay, I didn't see it because it's a
do have
lot
4.
earlier.
Right.
Never mind.
It's like 11, so it's 11 days before the others. Okay,
That's okay.
Right.
that's fine.
It's
Right.
okay. It's okay.
You know, in looking at some of the district-wide events, some of scheduling, I did have to move one up to start in September. So with that, I'll just jump right to September 5th. That is a bold date, which means it's a new date from the last timeline.
Okay. Mr. Persis?
Yes, Ms. Haynes.
September 5th can't be on the west side though, because I have to be at the FSBA Board of Directors.
Okay, so what you're saying is September 5th would be one of the east side dates. if
Okay.
that's-
Or does the board want to attempt to try to name those locations today?
Yeah, I think we should try to
Yes,
name
try
those
to.
locations. That's a good way of phrasing it, I think. I know, Ms. Cuthbert, you and Ms. Wright were talking, I don't want to speak for Ms. Wright, about maybe getting something somewhere, you were saying last time, between New Smyrna and Port Orange or
We thought that,
Daytona.
no, we haven't asked.
Yeah.
So it'd be news to them if they're listening. We thought the South Daytona Port Orange Chamber of Commerce
Would be,
would be a nice central from northern Daytona all the way to, and it's not that far, north of Dunlawton
okay.
on US 1.
Okay, so, there she is right now. We're welcoming Miss Wright has just joined us, and Miss Wright, we're just talking about a possible location for a community forum on the east side. And Ms. Cuthbert was thinking somewhere around South Daytona, Port Orange.
The Chamber of Port Orange, South Daytona.
Yeah, they have an office there.
Yes.
And so that would be one, and then I don't know whether, Ms. Wright, you're thinking we should have another one on the more Daytona northeast side of the county, if you think we should.
I would say between your district and mine,
Yeah.
that'd be fine, and my district and hers, that'd be fine.
Okay, and, all right, so to help you, one location that was just brought up on the east side would be the Port Orange Chamber of Commerce building, and Ms. Cuthbert, can I ask you to contact them?
Yes, I'll
and see if
contact them.
that would be inappropriate?
6 o'clock.
And Mr. Chair, would that be on September 5th?
5th, that would be
Okay.
on September 5th.
At 6
because-
p.m.?
September 5th, okay.
Yeah, right. And I guess 6 o'clock, is that,
6 seems to be a good time. You know, folks kind of get off at 5 if they need to run home and kind of take care of children for a little bit, and then come to the 6 o'clock meeting.
Okay.
And usually those meetings are about an hour and a half to, certainly no more than 2 hours.
okay,
Okay, I would have to contact to make sure that the building
Yeah,
is
that
free.
the building
Yes.
is available?
So I'll just plug this in as a tentative.
Okay,
Until we,
and when is the next date for a community forum?
the next date would be September 16th.
Okay, so let me ask Mr. Cologne and Ms. Haynes, is that a good west side date?
I'd be happy if it's okay with Ruben, if we took the 16th and the 19th, because it's a Monday and a Thursday, so it gives choices. I was considering though, I don't know what you're considering, I was considering a high school, you know, like
Yeah,
asking
yeah.
Deland High and using their auditorium. And
Yeah.
then maybe, you know, Deltona or Pine Ridge and using an auditorium.
So my reservation with the 16th is that's a Monday night, and that's when Deltona Commission does their meetings, and that is a meeting Monday. So
What if I took the 16th for DeLand?
that's
Yeah.
fair game. And then the 19th, and we could plan on high schools. I know that City Hall, the city manager has opened the doors to me. She just asked me for a date, so tentatively, we could plan on Deltona High. And if we're able to score City Hall, I think that'll be more of a centric location to call both elementary, middle school, and high school parents, and they can accommodate quite a bit of folks there as well.
Okay, then let's see if this works out. So Ms. Haynes, through Mr. Egner, maybe, can we contact the DeLand High for the 16th, right? And Mr. Cologne, do you want to contact City Hall?
So I'll contact City Hall, and if Mr. Agner, and then if that doesn't pan out, I'll send an email actually as we're here, and if that doesn't pan out, then we can do Deltona High.
Okay, so that's on the 19th,
Sure.
okay? Yes, Dr.
Cafeterias and media centers work better than auditoriums.
Okay,
Because the format we use is, we usually like to have tables, and if there's a large number of people, get into tables and kind of work in groups, and then they'll all present together with some technology, so.
Great.
those work. Then we get away from just the auditorium seating type.
okay. And then that brings it back to us then. It looks like we have September the 26th as the last date.
Think about Holly Hill?
As a school, yeah, I think Holly Hill School would be great.
Why don't we do Holly Hill?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, so then for us on the 26th,
Yes,
the other east side location would be Holly Hill School. Mr. Egner, if you could ask them if that's,
Is that a high school, middle school?
it's a K-8 school.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Excellent.
Thank you.
It's our only one, so K-8. And we could do it in the, I don't know, cafeteria or whatever works for that school. Kelly, given those dates, what did we just say, the 5th, the 16th, 19th, 26th, are we conflicting with any open houses or anything of that nature that you're aware of? So,
It's excellent. We'll put the addresses on those too.
Yeah, once I confirm it.
Confirm it, okay.
And
all right, looks like we're in good
Good.
shape.
So, Mr. Chair, we'll just hold this as a TBA until the next meeting?
Right.
Or until somebody maybe contacts me to say we're confirmed, and I can fill in at the next meeting
Yeah,
on the 20th.
each of the board members who were kind of assigned a task, if you just let me know, yes, we are good for that date, great, and then I can contact you.
Okay.
And I'll let you, so if each board member contacts me and lets me know, yes, we're all good, then I'll probably send it to Kelly, and then Kelly can send
Okay.
it to you.
And if you could, the name of the location, the address.
The address.
You know, cafeteria, meeting room, or just so we can, again,
Absolutely.
well inform the public.
Great, yeah,
Okay,
a good,
perfect.
a good idea. Yes, sir.
A
Yes,
general
Mr.
format would be, a board member normally would like to come, and the board member usually will introduce talk a little bit about the search, and then turn it over to us. And then we'll have some forms to fill out where they'll identify qualities, strengths, and challenges facing the new superintendent. And then we'll do our best to take notes, and then turn those around back to the board members. Some boards like to have a staff there. If it's a school, the principals usually like to come and say something about their school. Some boards like to have someone from the board taking some notes. And then sometimes there are some just light refreshments like water, because the whole purpose of this search is to showcase all the good things that are going on and get the community involved. So you can kind of make that as elaborate as you would like it.
Okay.
Wherever you have
Okay,
it.
great. So if a staff member asks you, Mr. Superintendent, can we be there? Can we participate in the meeting? Then the answer would be
Answer's yes.
yes, that they could,
It's
yes.
a public meeting anyway, correct?
Absolutely.
So
And
anyone
anybody
could
can go to any meeting anywhere in the county. They're all advertised, and, the more people show up, the
And
better.
we know.
Ms. Cuthbert has a question. Then we'll-
If my venue does not work out, or if they charge, they may charge, I'll seek out a school.
Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, good point. Mr. Cologne?
I just
Yep.
had a question for
Okay.
Mr. Dorn, if we were gonna notice the meeting, since Jamie and I are gonna be sharing it as well as you guys, that way we get ourselves
Yeah.
covered.
Sure.
All meetings should be noticed as a school board meeting.
Great. Back to you.
All right, thank you. So we're moving on down, still on the first page. I'd mentioned earlier that we started the advertisement period a few days earlier, August 26th. So on September the 25th, which again, we're still about a month posting, the advertisements will close on September 25th, midnight. And as we discussed at the last meeting, my plan would be, again, upon receiving the resumes and confirming they have a complete packet, then at the closure or even during the advertisement period, I will be sending board members, if your preference is every Friday, completed applications that have been received after the first week, the second week, the third week, so you'll have time to kind of vet and go through those if you would
Okay.
like.
Let me
we
ask the board.
Yes.
Board members, did you hear, is that what you want, to get them every week, every Friday, so you'll have them over that weekend? Is that acceptable? Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
there'll be then basically 4 submissions that you'll get them on a weekly basis.
Great.
Normally, they're sent to Connie, and then she sends them to the board members.
Right.
So there's a point of service that they come in.
We'll
Whatever is
arrange
the,
that. Yes,
whatever
sir.
works yeah,
Okay.
the best and most convenient, yes.
Okay. And then moving forward with the timeline, you'll notice that September 26th, October 3rd, October the 10th, and October the 11th, I've identified as meetings for the advisory screening committee. There is a chance that we will not need all 4 of those meetings. Typically, the screening committees can complete their work in 3 meetings. I always like to throw one in just in case there are in any kind of stumbles. So there's a chance that one of these will not be needed, and if not, it would be the last one there on October the 11th. But I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to give the screening committee ample time to do their work. Sometimes they don't want to feel rushed, and I didn't want to do that, so I put in an additional meeting, but this will be our tentative schedule for the advisory committee meetings. Again, there are no other changes to the schedule that we discussed from the last time we met, so this is kind of our revised timeline search, pending any future revisions that are needed. So if there are no objections, if you would kind of tentatively approve this as our new schedule as of today.
Right, board members, do you have any comments about the schedule itself, just the schedule? Mr. Egner had a question.
It's not a scheduling question, but on the advisory committee meetings, do you have a preference of where they take place, AKA the same place each time? Or do you want them moved or rotated or anything of that nature?
Yes, we would prefer them the same location, the same time for each meeting,
Okay.
if that's possible.
I was going to ask you, Mr. Superintendent, if like a room like in the Olson Center, that big, where Futures meets, if that would be acceptable
We'll find out.
for those dates. It's sort of central, and it's a nice big conference room, and it's one of ours, so we don't have to pay anyone to use it. Connie?
For the community forums, as soon as we get finalized dates, you let me know so I can start getting with Amber to get them advertised also.
Yeah, well, these are the dates.
I think the
right?
dates are confirmed, it's simply locations.
Right, as soon as we get, again, 6 o'clock?
Yes.
6
For
o'clock.
all of them.
And we're
yes.
saying right now, we hope in Olson Center, 6 o'clock on these dates, and with the notion that, and I guess we're going to segue into the committee itself or we're going to wait a little bit
Well,
longer?
I had one other item on the
Okay.
schedule. What we would like to do is on the dates of our community forums,
Yes.
the September dates that we've just discussed, if you have internal groups that you would like for FSBA to meet with and kind of get feedback from those internal groups that we discussed before, we would like to, or at our previous meeting, we would like to have those meetings maybe on the afternoons prior to each community forum. So Dr. Vogel and I would say be at a location maybe here to talk with your PTA group or your union groups or whatever internal groups you would like for us to talk with, say maybe from 3 o'clock until 5 o'clock or 3 until, and then we would go from there to the community forums.
All right, and when you say that, are you saying that, let's pick a day here, let's say September the 5th is the first community forum at 6 o'clock, and that one was going to be at the Port Orange, we hope,
We think.
chamber, that let's, say at 3 o'clock, you would meet with the teachers' union
Maybe here.
representative.
Right.
Would that, and then that would be here.
Yes.
And if you were going to meet with the teachers' union representative, it would be just the teachers' union representative and not 2 or 3 groups at the same time, or would they all be here at the same time?
Kind of up to your, your choice. The meetings are, we never turn anybody away.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, obviously, they have different interests. If I
Right.
had the Chamber of Commerce meeting with the teachers' union,
Right.
meeting with faith-based organization, I mean,
Right.
they all have their own.
Probably,
areas.
it probably makes more sense to kind of have individual groups with like interests to meet. But we were just throwing out that we would like to try to get those on the same dates of the community forum. So when we
Of
travel
course,
up,
yeah.
we would spend, maybe 11 to 3 or 4 with any internal focus groups or that you'd want us to speak with. Then we would have time to go to the locations for the community forums.
Got it. The superintendent had a question.
I don't want to do anything out of order, but I noticed that Elizabeth Albert is here, and since we're talking about a meeting with her group that she would lead, Elizabeth, what would be your preference, to meet individually or as part of several groups? What would you prefer?
I think I would prefer individual, and depending on your community meeting location, we could even host. So if it's easier if you're traveling to the east side.
Yeah.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Then I would recommend that these be individual
Yeah.
group meetings.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, 30 to 45 minutes. I mean, something like that. Yeah.
Maybe an hour per group. Could we do like 2 groups, but an hour per group?
Sure.
Yeah. They don't take that long. They don't take. Yes, Connie?
Will those meetings be open to the public?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
I
are.
don't see how we can say they're
Yeah.
not
Those would
open
need
to
be
the public.
noticed too. And also, will the superintendent search committee meetings be open to the
Yes.
public?
Yes.
So they-
Yes. Right.
Yep.
So, Mr. Chair,
No
if it's-
secret meetings.
Yes, if it's possible at the next meeting on the 20th, if we could kind of identify some of those groups that you would like to have, us
Okay.
meet with,
Okay.
your internal focus groups.
And would these internal focus groups be able to also serve on the broader community advisory committee?
Yes.
Yes.
A representative from that? group?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So just because they have their private meeting doesn't mean they can't also serve?
yeah, and it's not really a
Larger.
private meeting, it's an individual.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I got it. Yeah, I don't want to say the word private meetings. Ted, you're just supposed to catch me when I say that. No private meetings. There are no private
Okay.
meetings.
All right, so I think I'm good with the timeline, and we'll make some of those adjustments, and I'll wait to hear about the community forum locations. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Vogel for qualifications in terms of contract.
Thank you very much. What I did is I reviewed the job description that the board has approved, and then at the last meeting, I received input from the board that they would like to at least have the qualifications open for non-traditional candidates. So I made some modifications in the job description in the required qualifications, and I'd like to review those. Board members, I believe, have a copy of this in the packet. Okay. First, what we did is we have the master's degree in Ed Leadership Administration Supervision, or we added an educational or business field, and then the board had in their job description that they would earn doctorate as preferred. So we opened that up So that would allow someone from to additionally to apply if they didn't necessarily have educational qualifications. The second item I changed, your job description talked about holding a Florida educational educator certificate, and I changed that or is eligible. Florida does not actually require that a school superintendent have any certain qualifications. So I opened that up. If someone applies from up
It
north.
just sounds odd when you say that,
It
you
does.
know.
Ironically, the only certificate you can receive that says superintendent on it is after you're a superintendent. If you go through the FADS training program, then you can earn credentials as a superintendent that you completed that. But that's later, we'll talk about that. So it does seem unusual. So we've opened that up also for another professional designation. If your school board attorney would like to apply for the job, then he would be eligible to apply. We kept the minimum of 10 years successful experience in education, government, or business with at least 7 years in an executive leadership position. And then your job description talked about experience reflecting knowledge of education administration with an emphasis on large system management. One of the things that you don't have in here is any size restriction. You know, there's some districts that are smaller, but basically that's an important qualification. They have some large system management requirement. The board talked about someone supporting the strategic planning effort, and this is just directly out of your job description, talking about strategic planning and formulation implementation. And then your job description also had successful experience as a school principal and superintendent is preferred. And then I added one that must maintain residence in Volusia County, Florida upon employment. I felt that was important to this board after hearing from this board that they would want someone that is a resident of Volusia County. The contract terms would be, start date would be January 1st, 2020. If there's a few days fluctuation on that, that's not an issue, but essentially that's when it would start. And then we talked about a mutually agreeable transition period in December to work with your interim superintendent. I took the, added, then the board is prepared to offer a 3-year contract with a salary range, which we already talked about, of 185 to 225 plus competitive benefits. So I tried to listen to the board to open this up and then build what I put here based on your job description also. So I'd like to get approval of this because this would be in the advertisement and be posted.
Okay, board members, so thank you, Dr. Vogel. So those were the qualifications that we spoke about at our last meeting, and you captured them, I think, pretty well there. Are there any things you'd like to add to those or change in any way? I think they look pretty good. And I suspect you will maybe cull that down if it's going on a brochure or anything. Maybe you can combine things that, I don't know how many bullet points you end up with.
Sure, if that's okay, I certainly could combine it.
Seems okay with the board.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next. Okay, John.
Yeah, the online survey.
Okay. The next I'd like to talk about is a draft of the online survey. It's in your packet. And what we did was, based on board input, is we identified your areas that are in your strategic plan, and we then listed several items under each of those areas for the community or anybody in the district that they could react to. And then one of the board members suggested that it would be important to identify what was the most important statement. So we have these in the areas of student achievement, curriculum, internal, external communications, human resources, fiscal management, operations, infrastructure, and educational accountability. And then we also have open-ended inquiries, and we would need to get the board members, get a consensus of the board members on which of these areas they would like to be able to have the constituents respond to. And then those people that respond would indicate the stakeholder group they represent. And then also, the survey would have an opportunity for the person to put their zip code. We probably have the zip codes, and they could specify what zip code are in there to give the board further information. And then the survey would be hosted on your website through your portal. And then the data could be frequently accessed and summarized throughout the process.
Okay. Ms. Cuthbert?
I have two things.
Sure.
I think you meant of instead of if. In the, it says, under student achievement, which if the above statements do you believe?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So it should be of.
Thank you.
And
Thanks
I
for
think
catching that.
when I first read it, I was a little confused because the direction is below the selections. Could it be that the selections could be below the directions? For example, which of the below statements do you believe is most important?
I like that. Definitely do
And
that.
because that is pretty much the format of most of what we do.
Okay.
It's not at the
Good.
bottom, it's at the top.
Got it.
Okay,
That's good.
thank you.
It's a good suggestion, and all of those, we'll go ahead and
Good suggestion.
change
Yep.
which of.
Board members, other board members, any comments, thoughts? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Do you think it's, obviously it pairs up with our strategic plan.
The other question would be, looking at the open-ended inquiries, which of those open-ended inquiries would you like? Do we need all three, or could we use one or two of those?
Well, they're open-ended and not required, so arguably, if we want feedback, leaving the three on there open-ended, I mean, a lot of folks are just gonna answer the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s and keep on rolling, so, and which is okay. You know, I think the survey is good. I don't know how much value it's gonna bring to us, because it's like saying, who likes a pretty sunny day? Most folks are gonna say, 5, I like a pretty sunny day, and then you have occasional folks who are gonna say, I like cloudy days. I don't think it's gonna hurt, I just don't see how much this is gonna help. But it's fine for me.
It's another opportunity for community input, essentially, and you can utilize it, as another means of getting community input.
Yeah, and I just, for example, experience leading an organization with diverse student cultures, academic and social needs. How could that not be a 5? But in the order of which, if I had to pick out of the 4 questions that are asked, there's a few ways to read it. Which is the most important to me, I may give that a 5, and maybe the least important to me a 1, which doesn't mean it's not important, it's just not quite as important as the others, or I can rate them all a 5 because all of those things are important. So, I think it's great. I think we're gonna get a lot more of the feedback from the open-ended questions, which means we'll be reading.
Other board members? Thank you, Mr. Cologne. What it might serve to do is help us in our next strategic plan as we see how the public weighs in on these. We could use it for another purpose, perhaps, so it could help us, yeah. Okay, I think we're good with that then.
Great, we'll make that change.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving forward, if you would look with me, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Cuthbert had her
Something that
hand.
just came to me, I don't see anything about financial stability. One thing school districts are having a huge issue with is funding
Correct.
from the appropriate groups. One thing that will be presented today as our district cost differential, our lack of ability to give our teachers and our staff and everyone a really decent wage increase. So I would think, especially like in human resources,
Under fiscal
or
management.
fiscal
Yeah.
management.
Okay.
It says demonstrates fiscal responsibility and uses fiscal practices, understands the education, the FEFP, but also I'd like someone to be resourceful to help encourage and fight for us for increased funding.
I think, Ms. Cuthbert, with all due respect, I think that second one under fiscal management,
To maximize the resources of the district.
maybe,
Well, the only
or maybe a broader sense of resources
Yeah.
rather than just that. Yeah, Ms. Wright.
Yeah, and so I would be hesitant, because even though the superintendent role is to help lobby a little, I think that is a full-time job in and of itself. And I'd rather for him to understand the system so that he can instruct somebody else to go lobby. I don't want him to become he or she to become the lobbyist for the district. So I would rather not put that in there. As long as they understand the system, how we are funded, sound practices, and make sure that they understand business or financial background. I think the questions, in my opinion, they're good.
In the broader sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Cologne?
And I concur with, because the reality is that we're talking about, how do we expect them to handle what we do have? You know, we could sit here and talk, should teachers get paid more? The answer is always gonna be yes. And so, should this person be able to manage and fiscally make that happen? That's dealing with what we do have. I totally see what you're saying. However, I don't know that this is the avenue to use that to say, personally.
And we could use that interview question, though.
That's what I was just thinking. That'll be one of my interview questions.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. Yes, okay, we're moving on.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
That's a good
Yeah.
question. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would please look with me at the Citizens Advisory Committee Guidelines document. It's a two-page document, and I don't want to read this, line by line or paragraph by paragraph, but I would like to just summarize it for you. It does provide the purpose of the committee. Certainly it points out that pursuant to the statute, it is the board's authority and decision to hire the next superintendent. We just want them to be in support and screen those applications. We provide some general responsibilities and expectations of the committee members, basically to attend all the meetings, to keep pace with the timelines that are established, maintain appropriate records and documents, and so forth. Under the general overview of committee tasks, you'll see a little paragraph that's in italics. Again, I kind of point out that these meetings may vary depending on, the work of the committee, at what rate they perform their functions. At times, the number of applications that a district receives, to screen, say, 85 applications as compared to 40, the workload would not quite be as hard. So I do make a statement about kind of modifications there. And I'll just try to summarize. Generally speaking, 3 meetings are enough, as I mentioned before, but at the first meeting, which will be the day after your advertisements close, we'll have your board attorney there to kind of give sunshine regulations, what is allowable, what is not. We'll provide some data on school districts in the state of Florida, school districts across the nation, the size of those districts, so the committee can have a feel for where certain candidates may be coming from. We'll provide some other information there. We will also kind of advise them, generally speaking, what the screening process will be. After the next day after their first meeting, I will send to all of the screening advisory committee members the electronic packets for each applicant who made application with a complete packet prior to the closing date. By the second meeting, we'll ask the committee to come back and be able to screen down the group of applicants to maybe 18 or 20. We'll do that in a very open setting. We'll do it kind of by check mark. And at the end of the second meeting, we'll hopefully have the top 18 or 20 candidates that made application for the position. At the end of that second meeting, we'll ask the committee members to go back and dig deeper into reference checks, to do all they can to do as many reference checks on the 18 to 20 candidates as they can. At the third meeting, we will come back and go through a process to get those 18 to 20 candidates down to 8 to 10, maybe 11, maybe 7, to send forward to the school board for your consideration. So ideally, in 3 meetings, we can complete this, but as I mentioned before, I did throw in one more meeting as a safety net. There are 2 items on these guidelines that I would like clarification on, please. At the top of the second page, the third bullet down, it speaks to electing a chair and a vice chair of this committee. I will tell you that some school districts have wanted this committee to elect a chair and a vice chair and a secretary to kind of process those meetings. Other school districts have asked that your FSBA representatives facilitate and run those meetings, which we have done. So we have done both ways, and I would like some direction from the board if you would like this or you would like this removed.
Yeah, great. So let's get your thoughts on this, Ms. Haynes, and then Mr. Cologne. And
I'd like for you to run it.
yeah, I was thinking that way. Yes,
I
then Mr.
support
Cologne. Yeah, yeah. I think it just takes the whole favoritism out of it, or any political nonsense and nuance that may come up. And
Okay.
We're happy to do it.
yeah,
All right. Well, I will delete that.
you're not going to charge us extra for that.
No,
now,
no,
right?
sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Just want to
No,
make
sir.
sure we put that up.
Those. So.
Thanks, Carl.
Also, if you would please look with me on that same page, the item number 3, the rather large paragraph, the very last sentence. This is a meeting where the committee will kind of screen down to 8 to 10 candidates to send forward to the board. If you will notice the last sentence, it says FSBA consultants will also be prepared to identify the top 8 to 10 candidates if desired to do so by the board. So my question would be, would this board want FSBA to kind of put in their top 8 to 10 candidates along with the advisory committee?
Yeah, I don't see why not, but I'll leave it up to the board. Board members, how do you feel? Ms.
I'm
Haynes?
good with that.
Ms.
It
Cuthbert,
could
your
be the
thoughts?
same list.
Could be
but-
the same.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Sure.
Let's hope there's some overlap anyways,
Yes.
that's for sure, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I
Yeah.
think the more input we have
Yeah.
from experts, the better off we'll
Yeah,
be.
I certainly agree. I think everyone does. Okay.
Thank
yeah.
you. So we will leave that. Thank you. Okay, so that is the guidelines. Again, this will be discussed with the committee members on their first meeting night. The advisory committee membership, since we're talking about that, there's really not any handout in your packet about this, but we were talking about developing the actual membership. And in looking at a district such as Volusia with DeLand, and you have New Smyrna Beach, and you have your, clearly separated areas of the district. When you look at chambers of commerce, maybe you might have 3 or 4 chambers in Volusia County. So in thinking about this concept of the board identifying advisory committee memberships, is it really fair to try to ask the board to identify 5 groups that are kind of representative of everyone? You have, 2 or 3 colleges in Volusia. So to pick one college, is it difficult to leave out the other colleges? After some thought and after our discussion at the last meeting, it might be better if, rather than the board trying to decide, let's pick 5 groups that we all agree on, it may be better to say each board member just identifies 4 individuals to serve on the committee, and that is your committee. And as we talked about at the last meeting, knowing that some board members may have the same names on their list, as a board member, you may want to identify 8 to 10 persons that you would be able to kind of present names if your top 4 people are already picked by someone else.
Right.
So I would throw that out as a possibility to say, would the board accept kind of the somewhat modification process here of just identifying four community members each at the next meeting to create your 20-member team for the advisory committee?
Great, and so just so that I'm clear, so that a person that Ms. Haynes may be recommending may also be the person that is representing the DeLand Chamber of Commerce. And so she puts that name in there, and next to his or her name, it says that DeLand Chamber of Commerce, so that the rest of us know, because we wouldn't know, you know, their affiliations, let's say. So that at the end of the 20, let's say, we want to make sure we get a good representation of the entire county, which I think with 20 people, we should be able to do. Yes.
Right, and Mr. Chair, what has been, I think, successful and kind of is involved in just what you've spoken about is, as we ask for those 20 names from the board members, it is not just one board member saying, here are my 4 names. It really is kind of a going around the table, who is your first selection?
I got it.
Say, Ms. Cuthbert would name her first person, you know, then we just move down the line. So you kind of get a feel for how the advisory committee is being built. So you make sure you have a good diversity across the district with regard to many factors. So it's just better to kind of.
So getting back to that, and then I'll let you guys ask questions too of what was that. So Ms. Cuthbert, say, puts out the first name, and she says, I would like to recommend Julie Jones representing the Southeast Chamber of Commerce or something. And we say, great, and then do we just vote on each one or not, or just wait till the whole?
No, it's really like if we're kind of saying each board member picks 4.
Right.
So we really would not need a vote, I don't think.
I see.
Until,
Okay, so
you know,
we just say, okay, great, so now I make a note that we have the Southeast Chamber covered
Yes.
with somebody.
Right.
And that's good. And then we move on to Mr. Cologne would put somebody up and give the name and the organization perhaps. Not that it has to represent any organization. It
No.
could just be a person that he knows and has been involved with the school.
Yes.
That's, okay. Question, Jamie, did you have, Ms. Haynes?
I recommended last time 4, but Mrs. Wright recommended 5 so that we had an odd number.
No, I did ask about the odd number part, but I guess there's never really a vote on this committee where it needs to be odd. You may want to explain that.
Well, in this committee work, it is sometimes just magical that in all of these cases or searches that we've been involved in, whether you have 65 applicants or whether you have 30, really the top 18 to 20, when that committee comes back together, there's a clear demarcation that just rises to the top, and all of a sudden 80% of that membership, or 85%, has the same 10 names in their top group. There's never really a vote to include or exclude. It's more of drawing the line of where what number we send forward to what number we cut off. Do we cut off 17, or do we go and add 5 more people? So it's really never a vote to exclude or include one candidate. It is really just how it rises to the top.
Sure.
So the odd, even number of committees, again, we've had 36 on a committee, we've had 8 on a committee. It really, it all kind of rises without a lot of controversy, honestly.
Yeah, and and Ms. Haynes and Ms. Wright, I'm fine with 20 or 25 or 15 or whatever, but just that we all would get to recommend the same number, and just to make sure at the end of the day we have a real good group and we didn't leave anybody or any organization out. That's my goal with this. So Mr. Cologne, do you have a comment?
Yeah, so then in doing this, for example, are we sticking to our districts? In other words,
We don't have to.
we don't have
We
to.
don't have to, no. I did ask that, yeah. Good question, yeah. Yes, Mr. Egner.
Maybe it's assumed, but should it be assumed that they would have vetted this name with the candidate and the candidate would have already agreed to participate if selected?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so yes, so getting back to, before we bring a name up here, will they be able to attend for these meetings at 6 o'clock at a location, at Olson Center? That could be a deal breaker on some, because we don't want them there just at one meeting. They need to commit, okay?
And we've had a great success with people with perfect attendance. Anyone that makes that commitment comes to all the meetings. Good questions.
That's awesome. It would be under sunshine laws, right? They wouldn't have to fill out any public information, anything like that, any financial information. That, sometimes they ask that question. Yes, Ms. Cuthbert?
And when would you want our suggestions?
We were thinking that we could get
August 20th.
together and do this August 20th, so that gives us
Couple of weeks?
three weeks to talk to people and see if you can get a commitment. And I really think, how many did you say, 8? Like, be prepared to come with 8 names?
Well, I
would you say?
think maybe even, 10 or 12.
Really? Okay.
Honestly, because,
Well, the thing is, because of sunshine, right, Ted? So Ms. Cuthbert can't say, hey, Carl, I've already got confirmation from so-and-so's gonna be here, so she couldn't let me know that. Yeah, no.
Right.
So that's why we really won't know each other's names until we all meet here. So it'd be good to have a bag of names, I hate to call them a bag of names, but you know what I mean.
and two,
Have a
because,
list.
again, just geographically, the way Volusia is, maybe some of Ms. Cuthbert's individuals are gonna be really, a distance from, some other area of the district. So it may not be that hard to come up with these 20 folks.
Great. Ms. Haynes, you got a little
What I-
puzzled look there. Go ahead.
Well, since we can't, speak to each other prior to saying who they are, is it fair to just say this evening if we're going to contact, like, I was gonna do my very best to stay within my area,
Okay.
but there is some overlap.
Chamber?
Well, the chamber's an overlap, the NAACP is an overlap. There's different groups that are overlaps, and so I didn't know, because, I may be thinking of someone in one of those groups, but Ida's already thinking of someone in some of these groups that overlap. I didn't know if it's fair to say, I'm gonna reach out to, someone from this tonight, just so that we're not all focusing on the same thing. I didn't know if that would work.
If it would work if we tried to stick within our district, have,
Well, but we've got some groups that aren't, they aren't just within our district. They're
Right.
across the whole
right?
district that we would want representation, I would feel, on that committee from
I agree with you. No,
those individuals.
I definitely agree with you. My only thinking is that I think that's why we have to have many names to have, just to make sure we didn't leave anyone out, and to get that confirmation too, that they're willing to serve and put the
So,
time in. Because it may be, like, let's just use the president of the NAACP. Maybe you contact him, and maybe Ida does too, and that person may say, oh, Ida's already contacted me. Okay, great, fine. But it may be that the president can't do it, but somebody else in the organization could do it. And the president could find out who that is and get back with you, or I think that's gonna happen. I think we're all gonna, there are certain groups that we sort of know we're all gonna want some representation from, and so whether it's Futures or the realtors or the chambers and
So,
the PTA, all those kind of folks. So we may all have similar names, but let's hope we can come up with 20 names that are different. Yes?
so, Mr. Chair,
Clark.
should we consider going ahead and calling those folks, meaning the PTA is 1 seat? So that way I know PTA is covered. NAACP is another one. Faith Organization is another one. And so we already established the groups that are already gonna have a place at the table.
Yeah.
And so then that leaves 3 each to then supplement with other folks without having to feel that we may be leaving a group out. So if we
Or-
identify these groups,
Or having 2 or 3 from the same group on the committee.
Right.
Therefore limit.
And we don't want to go there. What we could do right now is just designate, like we did earlier with the committee locations, say, all right, Linda Cuthbert, will you contact the Southeast Chamber? And Mr. Cologne, will you contact the West Volusia Chamber? Jane, will you contact the Land Chamber? And you want to contact the Port Orange, South Daytona Chamber? I can contact the Daytona Beach,
There's 3 chambers.
the Daytona Beach, and then there's Ormond Beach Chamber. You know, there's a lot of chambers. You know, I mean, we could do that. We could designate folks, right, to call. Now, we don't need
You
to say.
can, but I mean, if you get 5 chambers, that's 5 of your 20 already eaten up. And you
Yeah.
haven't even talked
And
about faith or
Right.
NAACP or anybody.
any, and the NAACP,
And you
anybody.
don't want to
So-
be, like, tip the scales with just chamber people, right?
Right, and so, in hearing all of this, so, Mr. Chair,
Yep.
maybe we need to kind of give you a little list to do. Maybe contact the chambers and have them come up with a person. Same thing with NAACP, because I believe it's 4 different chapters in Volusia County. Yes, because it's one in New Smyrna, one in Daytona, one on the west side, or 2 on the west side of the county.
Right.
So I just think, you know, maybe, I believe Cynthia Slater is the highest ranking for
Yeah.
Volusia, but I may be wrong. But just reaching out and ask them who, and just let them know we want a representative. Because I think Volusia County is large.
Yeah.
And if we have a representative from the chamber, a representative from Futures, a representative from NAACP, then we could go, because I would like to look at potentially a former superintendent. I mean, I'll just use it. So I just think if we all agree on who are our key constituents, we know we want the union on there, so you have Ms. Albert here, or she may want to talk to VESA, and they decide who they want to represent. But I just believe that if we kind of get a cohesive group of maybe 5 and then maybe a little more colleagues as we look at this, because we are already at 5 or 6.
Yeah, we are. But that's fine. You know, I'll do whatever you'd like. If you'd like me to
When
contact
it comes
those
to the
groups.
chamber, I agree with Mrs. Wright, but I think we need one from the west side, one from the east side.
I don't.
For
that's fine.
example, Jim Cameron from Daytona is here often in our meetings, very well versed. He's head of the education committee in Daytona, and he knows a lot what's going on in the east side. But he may not know enough on the west side. West side a lot of times has different concerns.
So that's fine.
Yes, Con.
I don't think employees can be on the committee, can they? Is that what you said
Sure.
last time?
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Did you guys say last time employees should
No,
not
they can be on the committee.
They can't
Can
be.
be on.
They cannot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Employees can be on. Yes. Mr. Dorn, did you,
Oh, I
thought
was
you wanted
just-
to weigh in on something?
If I had to, on
Okay.
the employee part.
Oh,
we want-
okay.
We
Gotcha.
don't want anybody that would be supervised indirectly or directly by the superintendent to serve on the
Okay.
committee.
That's what I thought I heard that at the last meeting, so I wanted to
Okay.
clarify that.
Was that your question there, Ms. Haynes, or your
No,
answer?
So your list that you were taking, did you put Faith on the list?
I did not. I have faith now. I have Chambers, 2, NAACP, Volusia County Council of PTA, Futures, the Union, and Faith.
So that's.
What about realtors? From the
Yeah, we either need
realtors?
a Realtors and Home Builders Association.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Volusia Home Builders Association.
Realtors, you think just one, just the overall one, or are there 2 or 3 of them now? There's probably 3 at least, huh?
If you do that, then you are not including the Volusia Manufacturing Association either. So just let you know that.
Well, then you have the Hotel Motel Association,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
and you have the Turtle Protection Group.
Come on.
I think 10 is enough.
My point is.
Okay. I got- okay,
There's
here's
hard,
what
it's
I-
hard to draw the line. It's like a wedding. Who do you invite? You know, where do you draw the line?
think we got a pretty good group here. Yes, Ms. Haynes.
Because somebody did say the hotel, because
Yeah.
of what Mr. Davis says.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
It's amazing.
they support every one of our schools.
Yeah.
And they're in and out of them.
So do we have up to 10, Mr. Chair?
I had, well, if you put 2 chambers, we have 10. There's 2 chambers, NAACP, Volusia County Council of PTA, Futures, Unions, Faith, Realtors, VMA, and the Hotel Motel Association.
And Volusia Hispanic Association as well.
Yeah.
I think that gets us all covered.
So in that case, maybe we should only have one chamber and let the chambers decide. Because I think at the end of the day, listen why I say that. Because at the end of the day, everyone's trying to find out about economic growth and what they can do for their communities.
Right.
And so if we have the Hispanic, we have the NAACP, and we have a chamber, I think that's a good representation of the district. Now, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think we're trying to keep it to 10 because now it's limiting who we can actually put on.
Well, and correct, and so at the end of the day, if we decided, let's say Mr. Cameron in Daytona is gonna speak for the chambers, that doesn't mean that I can't decide to put Sherry from the chamber as
Yes.
one of my
Yes,
Exactly.
yes,
five.
exactly.
If I value that opinion.
So, since we're up to 10,
Yeah, so now we have a
I'd
group of
really-
about
I'd really like
25
to
now.
go to the 25 so that we each get 3
Yeah,
instead of 2.
I'm good with that.
Because I'm covering a lot of area.
You are.
To try to select 3 people from.
Okay, so you're gonna trust me to contact these 10, and I'm trusting you to,
repeat
Did you
to,
repeat
10 or
those
11?
again?
That for me to,
Go for-
to you get each of you 3.
sure. Could you repeat? the
But
10?
don't contact these people.
Okay.
10
So,
So is it gonna be one
Can-
Go ahead.
chamber?
If he contacts those 10 and gets a commitment from those 10, can we receive an email knowing who those 10 are?
Yes.
So that if we know, say it is Jim Cameron coming, that Ruben's okay to ask somebody from the chamber on this side, or,
Yes.
you know,
Yes, that's okay, as long as you send it for informational purposes and nobody responds to it.
Right.
okay.
And I would put right in it and copy me so that
Yeah.
if there's a problem, I can,
Great.
correct it quickly, but, yeah.
I think you're giving me some homework here, getting these 10 and making sure they can do it.
Is
Repeat
it
the
10 or 11? I thought you said it was
Well,
11.
We
it
cut it.
depends. Now, we need to clarify, the Volusia Hispanic Association, Ruben, is that a chamber?
It's a chamber.
It is a chamber,
Yeah.
and that's different than the West Volusia Chamber?
Yes.
Yes, and that's different than the land chamber.
Right.
Which is
So-
different from the Daytona chamber.
Well, so there's 3 chambers on the west side and 4 on the east side.
And that's why I said if we leave the one on, let the rest of them, because I think the Hispanic chamber is really a unique niche.
Yes.
I would equate that to the NAACP. So now you do have good representation.
Okay, so I'm back to 10 now, because I'm doing just one chamber, and I would go to.
Countywide.
To Jim Cameron first, whatever it's called now, the Daytona Regional Halifax Chamber, whatever it
Yes.
is. NAACP, Volusia County Council PTA, Futures Inc., the union, and I'm saying the teachers' union, the faith organization, a representative from the Realtors, VMA, Hotel Motel Association, and the Volusia Hispanic Association, Chamber. And that's 10, right, Ms. Cuthbert?
Yes, so you're not gonna have the building industry?
I don't have it here,
Okay, it's
but
just-
I think they should be.
But there's nothing to stop somebody from
No,
filling in
right,
these
no,
gaps. I mean,
That's right.
anybody, you got a lot of other choices, so.
Oh, yeah.
Even like the
I-
West Side Chamber, I mean, somebody needs to be on there. It's
Yeah,
just.
I'm
pick it.
sure you have all been asked already
No.
from some folks. No, not at all. Yeah, Mr. Edmund, you have a comment?
Point of clarification on this, and maybe you can help, and maybe I'm the only one that this means anything to. When you're asking a group to recommend a representative, and that's
Yeah.
10 or 11 organizations that I'm hearing, and then the board members get to pick other, quote, individuals. is it assumed that the individual chosen by the group is an independent thinking individual making a decision based on their own perception of the applications, et cetera? Or are they here as a representative of the organization, which means the organization's values and ideals come first? They're just to represent those values. There's a distinction in how someone might vote or select or look at a candidate. If I'm looking at it as Tim Egner, and I was picked because they thought Tim could bring something to the table, that's one thing. If I'm representing the school system of Volusia County Schools and asked to make a decision, I might look at it somewhat differently, and I just thought that would be an important clarification. It's not important for today, but it might become important later as people discuss things.
I don't know what you gentlemen want to.
Okay, I would say this. A business person is going to look at the applicants from a business person's perspective and will have contacts in the business in other chambers of commerce. If it's a chamber of commerce person and the person worked in another school district, he might call the chamber in that district and find out about, this person's work with a business. So you're representing your individual interests, but you're utilizing your knowledge or your career to assist in the process. But the people who are on this committee will look at the qualifications that are required. Then they will also look at the qualities that the board is looking at, and they will utilize those to go ahead and make their recommendations. So I'm not sure, and I think the reason to have a committee from different aspects is because school district is such a large, impacts every one of these organizations in some way.
I think probably, as usual, the way I presented that was a little confusing. So let me say it a different way. If I represent any one of these, I don't want to put a name to it, and I'm listening to the discussion, and I know that organization has a meeting the next day, do I say, okay, I'm going to take these names back and we'll vet it at the meeting, and then I'll come back with the organization's vote, whereas the individuals they may pick have no one to go back to necessarily to ask that. In other words, it's just how the persons participating would be oriented to act.
They're participating as an individual. And we've never had a situation that I'm aware of, that they've gone back to an organization to try to get a consensus of that particular
And I
person.
know that I tend to look at the end of the dominoes falling, and so I probably over-worry. But my concern was if someone is viewed as representing an organization, and this person is representing an organization, and this organization has a different pick than this organization, have we put the two organizations in conflict over this decision? Whereas if it's two individuals who were supposed to make a decision, and that's the way it's stated, I think there's less opportunity to cause groups that we depend on to be at odds with each other.
Yeah, we haven't had that at all come up.
No, we really haven't. And again, whether it be, the chamber or a college foundation, or even your foundation here that supports a school, again, these are well-educated, hardworking folks that care about their community, and in some aspect, they're touched by the school system, as Dr. Vogel said. And I will tell you, these folks take this assignment very seriously. They work very hard at it. I really can't tell you, as kind of, facilitating some of these meetings, that once I shoot the resumes out to these folks the day after our initial meeting, I'm just kind of inundated with calls for another week until they meet again about, what do you think about this person's I went to this, go look at this resume on this line. I mean, they're in the weeds on 50 to 60 people, and they're calling, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, I don't like this about this person. Is that a reason to keep them out? And, it's, they just take it seriously. And kind of back to the original question is, whether it be the college rep or the chamber rep or your teacher's rep, the good quality people that are applying to be your next superintendent, who have been a superintendent or a deputy superintendent, they've got results that kind of back up why they rise to the top, and those three groups are going to have those top people at the top. It just,
Yeah.
it works
Yeah.
well.
Sounds great. Thank you. All right, then, I think we have a plan.
Okay, great. So we're going to wait till the next meeting.
We're gonna
and
wait till the
we'll
next
hopefully have at least 10
meeting.
people, and then the board add 3 more each.
Yeah, and let me, may I, board members, what are your thoughts about the 3 colleges? Bethune-Cookman, Stetson, Daytona State College, and
Embry-Riddle, there's
and
4.
Embry-Riddle. Yeah, I gave up Embry-Riddle, yes.
Well, when you talk of the hotel motel industry, Bob Davis is head of that, but he's also a trustee at Daytona State. So that's taken care of in one.
Well, I'm just saying, do we need, obviously, of those 4, we do hire a lot of people from Daytona State College. We have a great relationship with Stetson, with their professional training that we do in partnerships. We've always had a great relationship with the BCU, and we have a great startup relationship with Embry-Riddle now, with girls in engineering and all those kinds of things. So, I don't want to favor one over the other, but certainly keep those institutions in mind as you're making your individual appointments. I certainly would love to have at least 1 or 2 of them, I think, on this panel. Yes,
All
sir.
right, thank you, sir. Okay, we'll move to the next item. Dr. Vogel is going to give a quick summary of the opportunities for community involvement.
What I'm going to do, based on our conversation today, I will modify this, and then this is a document that you can post on in your portal, and then if people want to know how they can be involved, you might want to have it, we might change the title, Get Involved in the Superintendent Search Process, here's the way to do it. We'll go ahead and modify that, you can put that on the portal. And the board, Kelly, I'll work with Kelly on that, and then if there's any other changes we need to make on that, please give us input on it. Okay, and John is going to talk about the portal itself now.
Right, the one-page document on the web portal, and again, this is a portal that will kind of be on your home page. It'll have an icon, Superintendent Search, and then the public can kind of click on there and see a variety of these items, again, to keep the public informed, provide them with opportunities to get involved. They'll know when community forums are going to be held, the locations. So this is a quick summary of what will be on that portal for the public to view. And I will say that I spoke last week to Joe within the IT department, and he has looked at this and said there'll be really no issues with providing some of this information. So, a great effort on Joe to kind of look at this and say it's going to be fine. The discussion about qualifications and characteristics, Dr. Vogel is going to talk about that.
One thing that's so nice about the portal, at the end of the search, you can put it all on a flash drive, and here's the whole process right here. If anybody says, how did the search go or something, it's readily available to everybody. What I did, based on our conversation with the pre-search interview and listening to board members and talking about what your priorities are, this is not in your packet. I summarized some potential leadership qualities that you might want to include in the brochure. Now, this is not for the entire list, and I'll pass this out, and it's not for you to take action on today, but what we would need is, we would need to get the leadership qualities that you would like to identify that you would like to see in the brochure. And when Kelly writes a brochure, it's not going to say this is the list. It's going to say these are included. And I tried to go ahead and focus on the communication aspect, the instructional leadership, and we talked about extensive knowledge of school finance on it, and also one thing that you also mentioned, partners with community leaders and legislators to accomplish mutually beneficial goals. So look through this, and on the 20th, we'd like to finalize this. And this is just a guide. If you don't like any of it or anything, please feel free to change it. This just gets you started on the conversation.
Great. Thank you.
And these are very important to us because we do everything we can to find the absolute perfect fit for this board based on the leadership qualities you would like for your next superintendent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
John.
Chair. The last two items I'll just cover briefly. I just wanted to confirm, just as confirmation, that the board does want me to receive the applications, the complete applications, and then I will document that receipt, share it with Connie, and then we'll provide those to the board every Friday. We will not have the application process go through your HR department.
Okay,
They will
board
come-
members, that's right? We
Yes.
want them all to go to FSBA. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And the last item, the advertisement venues, because really, once we kind of close the finalize of qualifications and a few things at next meeting, we'll be ready to prepare for our advertisement dates. And the advertisements that we talked about and agreed upon last meeting was the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents, the Education Week Top Jobs, the Florida Association of School Administrators, and the National Alliance of Black School Educators. So those are the 4 venues that we will advertise based on our conversations last week.
Great. And do you recall what that budget was for that? Was it?
Right at 1,700.
Okay. I thought we had like a max of 3 there for some reason, but okay,
Right.
good.
It will certainly be less than 2,000. Yes.
Thank you.
I think we're done, sir.
All right, can I ask you a question that may come up with us now that this is going to become more and more public, and a candidate make a direct contact with a board member? What's your counsel on that, and how should we handle that from this date forward?
As a board member, I would welcome all conversations with anybody that does call you about the position, and I would, if anyone interested, you're encouraged to apply. If you have any specific questions, please contact the FSBA representatives, and then our phone numbers are right, and we text right on the website. So, I would be cautious about making any commitments to anyone, that would apply.
May I
Yeah.
piggyback on that question and ask about questions to me or members of my staff of a like nature from candidates?
That's a good point.
I would use I would just have them contact us to do that. That kind of works out the best way. That's why, we're here to go ahead and be able to answer any questions they might have. I will say this, we've had tremendous interest in Volusia
You've
County.
had tremendous interest
Yes, we have been
already.
already, before we people are calling us. This is a very desirable school district, and I think the way Kelly is developing the brochure, I think you'll be pleased when you see drafts and you'll have input in that. It's really an opportunity to showcase all the excellent work that's going on here.
That's great news. That's great news to hear. Mhm. All right, board members, any further questions for these gentlemen?
Could we have your cards again?
Sure, absolutely.
Cards, okay. Connie, you have any questions for them? Are you clear with everything? Kelly, you're good? All right, so
Thank
the
you.
next
Thank you
time
very
we'll
much.
be talking, we'll all have our committee names ready to go here on August the 20th.
Our committee names,
Yeah.
the possible internal focus groups that you'd like us to talk with,
Internal focus groups.
And the locations.
and locations for community forums.
Kelly, you writing that down too? Okay, thank you. Make sure we capture all these things before we go. Are there any further questions, comments about this item? Board members? All right, so we thank you, and
you.
we look forward to the next time we're
Yes, sir.
together on August 20th, moving this search process along. Board members, let's take a break. Come back in about 15 minutes. Okay, that'd be All right, we're going to reconvene our special school board meeting taking place today on July 30th. Before we get to our next topic, I've been made aware we have a couple of people that would like to address the board, so rather than have them wait another 2 hours, I think it would be, if it's okay with the board, we'll go ahead and allow them to speak now. The first person that filled out a card was Michelle Franks. Michelle, are you still here? Hello. Unless you want to wait until 5:30, but okay. All right.
Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Franks and would like to discuss the issues at Atlantic High School as well as the professional standards. There are so many problems that 3 minutes will not cover all of it. I apologize, but I will be reading this statement. I have emailed each of you in the past and hope that you will look at this information and take action. The Florida Department of Education notifies parents if students are going to be interviewed for an investigation and allow parents to be present. Why doesn't Volusia County do the same? According to Mr. Egner, it's because they don't want us to, quote, tip off our children, acting as if this is a criminal investigation. I know personally we have all taught our children to tell the truth no matter the circumstance. My 16-year-old daughter, who suffers from social anxiety, was called behind closed doors alone with 2 men. This was very intimidating and scary for her. According to Mr. Egner, he has never seen harm come to someone with anxiety in this type of situation. I'm here to tell you, Mr. Egner, if this is your position, you don't understand anxiety. Also, please look at my daughter's statement, written statement versus typed statement from Mr. Strand. My daughter was totally misrepresented. So what's the point in investigation if professional standards is going to change the documentation? We have lost 46 teaching positions out of 80 at Atlantic High School since Mr. Hinson has been in place. I would think as a district that this would be a red flag. Please look into the number of professional standard cases that Mr. Hinson has started against his faculty and staff. I am sure you will see the number is significantly higher than others in his position. Look into the emails of Mr. Hinson directing the APs to change documentation. What are parents to do when there's a problem? I followed the chain of command. I've gone to the principal. I was told not to point fingers. I don't know what I'm talking about, and the conversation is over. I went to Ms. Freeman, who wouldn't call me back for 2 years. When I finally spoke to her, she stated she didn't want me speaking or confronting Mr. Hinson because she didn't want anything bad to happen to me. Mr. Ouellette, when asked about the situation, told me if I continued or if I was rude, I'd be trespassed from Atlantic. During my meeting with Mr. Egner, I was told noise and drama would not change his mind in moving a principal. This isn't noise and drama, Mr. Egner. This is my daughter's education, health, and the career of some very valuable teachers. I now ask you as a board to please listen and to please do something since everyone else has fallen on deaf ears.
Thank you, Ms. Frank.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is Felicia Benz.
Felicia Benzo.
Hello, Felicia
Hey,
Benzo.
hi, how are you today?
Nice to see you.
Great to see all of you. I'm going to take my own time. I came here today because, as you may or may not know, I ran 3 literacy and leadership academies this year. One was at Galaxy, one was at Southwestern, and the other was at Campbell. All of them were a success this year. The change at Campbell was, instead of having 5 levels, we had 3 of 6th graders entering the middle school. We were told to do this, or asked to do this, as a way to address the issue of administratively advanced students who are not on level academically with reading. And we gave them books to read. They read 14 books in the 6 weeks. They were on fire. They used those words like weapons on us that they accomplished. And I'm just bringing this up because I'm aware of the fact that Campbell has been having a rocky time, going from F to a C under one administrator, Dr. Pycott. The other 2 administrators couldn't do it. You have to put the right combination of administrators in that school and the teachers. I know it's 82% African American. They have a large population of students that are not performing well. But we forget that you have to put the right combination of teachers there. So I'm aware of the fact that for your B and A schools, those teachers are able to get a stipend of some type or incentive of some type for the performance of their students and performance of the school. That would not happen at a Campbell school because they are not able to move those children the same way. They don't already have the complete package like the A and B schools. Now, this smacks of the separate but unequal system we just came out of in the 60s. I'm sure all of you are old enough to remember that. That school needs your super performer teachers who are experienced and know how to work with this population to move them. But the other part of it is the feeding schools have 5 years to bring these kids to average or above average performance, and they're not doing that for whatever reason. It's probably the same reason. They don't have the right teachers. Now, I'm not talking about your coaches. I'm not talking about your coaches or whatever you want to call these people that you put in there to help you need people in the classroom, people that work with these types of children, that inspire them.
Thank you, Ms. Benzo.
3
Your
minutes?
time is up.
That's right.
Thank
Okay.
you for being here.
That's it. I hope
Thank
that
you.
helps you.
Thank you. It does.
Thank you.
Kelly, do we have any other cards? Okay, then we'll close the public participation time and get back to our agenda. And that is to now have a presentation, item 3.01 from our Professional Standards Department. And two gentlemen approaching here. Thank you. And if you'd kindly state your name and your titles before you start speaking.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Superintendent. Stacy Manning, General Counsel.
Bob Willett, Manager, Professional Standards.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mr.
Basically, I'll just briefly, the reason we're up here today is there was some request from the board to get information on the process, procedures, that professional standards follows. And Bob is head of that department. He's in charge of those investigations and the process. And I'll let him go ahead and give you a little bit deeper insight into that process. And as there are questions that I can answer, I'll go ahead and jump in.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Mr. Willett.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Thank you, Chairman Persis. The Office of Professional Standards, there's some derivative of this kind of office in every school district, in at least Volusia County, and most larger school districts, around this, the country. A lot of times they are a function of HR. You won't find us specifically delineated in state statute. Most of the duties we perform are in statute under the duties required of the superintendent. So we work as the superintendent's designee and your designee or agent. Our basic job is to investigate and, when appropriate, enforce state statute, federal law, school board policy, and the Code of Professional Conduct as set forth by the state of Florida. Unlike a lot of departments, or just about every department, our department and what we do always begins with a complaint. We don't begin with a performance or a show. So by its nature, as soon as our process starts, it starts in some sort of often adversarial role. We begin with the initial complaint, which can come from a myriad of sources, from administrators, from fellow employees, from just folks who are in the general public, from concerned parents, and on rare occasion, even students. At that point, once a complaint is received, we have to kind of take an initial look at that complaint and see if it meets that criteria, that this is a complaint that could fall into professional misconduct of employees. We don't deal with the public. We're not looking at issues as far as, parents who, and issues that they may have on campus or student conduct issues. It's specifically those folks who are employees of Volusia County. And we have to explain that to some folks sometimes because we do get errant calls. Once we get the initial complaint, we go ahead and we take a look. Does this fall into misconduct that would be a violation of federal law, state law, the code of conduct or the professional code of ethics, and school board policy? If it does meet that standard, that if this allegation is provable, it would be a violation of one of those, then we would move forward with an investigation. The investigation, our responsibilities, we obtain, information, testimony from both the complainant, adults, students, anyone that we can find as a witness. We will take non-interview testimony like videotape evidence, things along those lines. We try to seek out whatever witnesses are available. We obtain any physical evidence that's possible. And in the end, we put it all together in what's called an investigation summary report. The investigation summary report, as best as we can, we try not to include any opinion. Now, the folks we interview always have an opinion. They have their side, okay? Our job is not to go ahead and discern when they're giving us their initial information in an interview whether or not we believe their opinion of it. We go ahead and take the facts as they present them, condense it into an investigation summary. At that point, the investigation summary is presented to the Professional Standards Committee. Past practice has been the Professional Standards Committee meets once a month. The information in the investigation summary, all evidence that we have that supports the investigation summary, including videos and our notes, are all given and presented to the committee. The committee reviews the information. They make a recommendation. In any given Professional Standards Committee meeting, there can be as few as 5 cases and as many as 25. At the conclusion of the committee, the recommendations are taken, and past practice has been that I meet with the superintendent. We go over the facts of the Professional Standards Committee, items that would include a board action such as a suspension without pay or termination would be brought forward by the superintendent. In the end, the superintendent is the final purveyor of the disposition from the committee. In the 13 months I've been in this position, I've had occasion to see it disposed of by the superintendent, either in agreement with what the committee or in disagreement and deciding to change what the disposition of the committee was. At that point, we go ahead and generate a letter. We notify the person who was the recipient of the alleged, the original allegation of the disposition of the committee, and then according to contracts and policy, they have the opportunity to appeal or grieve the process as they see necessary. As a parallel track, when we receive the initial allegation, we are required to report it to the state Office of Professional Practices. We also again report to the state a second time once there is a disposition. The State Office of Professional Practices obviously is their own entity, and they choose what to do with that information, whether it's going to be a further investigation or whether they, a lot of times, will send us a letter that no further action will be taken in this matter. That's the general outline of the process. And at that point, I guess I would entertain any questions.
Sure. I think there are a few. Can you tell us who serves on the committee, on the Professional Practices Committee, and does that group change each month, or is it the same people each month?
In the 13 months I've been here, it's stayed the same. It's myself, the lead investigator, Rob Starin, the chief counsel, the area superintendents, and the director of transportation. and the chief human resource officer.
The director of transportation, what do you mean, like a Greg Aiken
Mitch
person?
Moyer.
Or a Mitch Moyer? Oh, okay. All right, great. All right, board members, questions? Ms. Haynes?
Okay, so you stated that during your interview process, you interview a variety of individuals. So you also stated that you interview students at times.
Mhm.
So I heard what you said, Mrs. Franks. So if you're going to interview a student or students, you interview them without parents being notified and/or the opportunity to be present regardless of their age?
We operate as school board employees. I'm a certified educator. I've been an assistant principal and principal at all levels. No different than what would occur in a discipline office in any of our elementary schools or middle schools or high schools, where students are called in and questions are asked. We operate under the guise of in loco parentis, which is established case law, that in lieu of the parents, we can speak to students as employees of the school board. If a student would say to us, I'd really like my mom or dad here, no problem. We most often, not every single time, but most often include a school member from that particular school in an effort to go ahead and put the student at ease.
Okay, so I hear and I know your history and I know what you've done. I have a similar history, but I also know that, and this is my opinion right now, you know, if I were to just walk into a school right now and for whatever reason be a part of an interview with a student, if I've not worked at that school and that student does not know me, that is different than if I have been a teacher at that school or an assistant principal or a principal, someone that student sees on a daily basis and or the parent, you know, is familiar with. You know, my daughter, when she was 6, was interviewed, but I was contacted and I was told that she was going to be a part of an interview because of an incident that had taken place in a teacher's classroom. And I was given the opportunity at that time, and granted she's 27 now, so that was 21 years ago here in Volusia County, but, you know, she wasn't taken in to be interviewed without my knowledge. And so I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but is it true that this young lady was interviewed with only gentlemen present in the room?
My understanding is this young lady was interviewed with my investigator and the school's principal, as in we often include a school official on the investigation as far as the interview process. Quite often, actually, some of the initial interviews of students will take place by the school administrators only, and we'll actually get the statements after the fact. And quite often, I would say that those administrators are speaking with those students, you know, without the possibility maybe of that second person there or a call home, just as it would occur in a school discipline office or many other different occasions when school officials talk to students.
Ms. Cuthbert.
Okay. To continue with Mrs. Haynes, is your process, is it based on Volusia County policy, or is it state policy or law? Is it just something that we developed and that's what we follow?
The process I've outlined? There is no state statute governing the exact process of a professional standards committee department. This is a construct of guidelines and procedures that have been established by, you know, my predecessors.
Okay, and my personal opinion would be, I think the child, no matter what age, when a person of authority comes in, can feel intimidated. I mean, as a teacher, I called my union rep when I was accused of bad behavior. And I think our children need representation too, at least a guidance counselor, someone who's on the child's side, someone and to bring in a school principal is more of an authority figure, but we need someone to be on the child's side. Do you know what I mean? It's just to help, as you said before, is to help calm the child, but also to have the child's benefits, and I guess to protect that child too.
And I guess the only thing I would add to that is the child isn't the subject of an investigation. By actual definition, we're not looking at issues with the child. I would argue that we're actually there to protect the best interest of the child, because we're looking at professional misconduct on the part of employees. I totally hear what you're saying. We start to walk down a slippery slope where we have 2 folks or a parent call every time that we have a student in the discipline office. DCF comes and speaks to our students all the time individually. But that being said, the policy and guidelines that professional standards follows are at the pleasure of the school board. You just need to understand that it will probably slow the process down, and it will probably lengthen the time that we are able to complete investigations.
I'm very well aware. I was married to a discipline assistant principal for many. I still am, but he's retired. So I understand, but I know what it's like. But still, whether the child's just being interviewed as a witness, still needs someone in there to eradicate the fear. And I understand about making the process go down, because I know if there's a fight, but I'm talking about something larger. Still, that child, when you have authority figures in front without someone that child can sit with, you may not get accurate information from that individual. The person may be more willing to express the truth if someone he or she knows is there right by them saying, it's okay, just tell the truth, it's okay. But when you have an administrator, so you're putting a lot of power and faith in an administrator who may be upset, who may be, I've got to get this out of this person. And of course, it could happen, but generally, it would be nice if we had someone on the side of the student.
And I totally hear you. The additional concern you might want to think about, though, is we couldn't have a counselor or a teacher in there on a professional misconduct investigation, because that's somebody from the same bargaining unit. And we'd be talking to that student about a colleague's misconduct. So it couldn't be someone at a level other than an administrator.
Was it possible at least to notify the parents?
That's completely up to the board.
I think that would be a good idea.
Egner had a comment.
I think that sometimes what gets misunderstood in these conversations, and I'm glad Mr. Ouellette brought it up, was I think initially it sounded like the assumption was that all these investigations are against or about a student. And that's a very different case if a student has been asked to self-testify against themselves, and whether they need an advocate or parent or anybody else in the room, versus what did you see today in the classroom at such and such a time, when it's about somebody else, especially about a teacher. And when I've been asked this question before, what I was asked with was, why would anybody not have a parent in a room? There's a lot of reasons you would not have a parent in a room, and what I have said before when asked that type of question is, when I was a principal and we had some type of investigation come up, and Mr. Ouellette is correct, usually I had to do the first part of it, and then it might go to professional practices after they looked at what I had done. There were situations I knew that the parent would prejudice the student. In other words, the parent was so domineering and had such an attitude about the circumstance that the student would be afraid to testify honestly in front of their parent, because it'd make their parent mad. In fact, I've seen parents where they were there when questions are being asked get so angry they had to be exited, and I feared for the kid. They were threatening their own child. So everything's a judgment call. So when in the absence of violating statute, then we're all called upon to make judgment calls as to the circumstances under which We think someone should be there, and we don't think someone needs to be there. And usually, when it's involving students and you're asking them what they saw or know about a situation in which there's no possibility that anything bad is going to happen to them, you usually get better statements. And I'll give an example. I've had situations where something happened in a classroom. You're trying to find out before the end of the day what really happened. So you're calling 20 kids in separately and asking, what did you see, what did you see, what did you see? If we had to call 20 sets of parents and have 20 sets of adults come down to be with the student when asking about whether someone threw a trash can or not, then the process for that would be inordinately slowed down to the point of if we're willing to let things like that go on indefinitely, that's fine. But I just think that there should be perspective, that we can never take the judgment out of the situation, and I don't think we should make assumptions that every situation in which an administrator is talking to a student, intimidation is involved, especially if the student doesn't say that they're concerned or ask if someone else could be there, and they're just plain talking to you. I had many students who preferred to talk to me than their parents, and I had parents I couldn't find. So those are all issues that plays into the everyday life of real administrators, and they have to deal with it. Having said that, if the board has an opinion that there should be a policy established for that, make the policy and we will follow it.
Thank you. Ms. Haynes, you had a follow-up, and then Ms. Wright?
I was.
Oh, I didn't see you.
That's
Okay,
okay.
okay, Ms. Wright?
And so that was my next question.
Yeah.
Do we have a set of policy, Mr. Manning, as it relates to professional standards?
No.
No, okay. So I guess some of this, we would, if that is what my colleagues so chose, we may have to look at some standards. And I hear what you're saying, Mr. Egner. The only reason I'm gonna gently disagree, because my son was called in reference to an issue that happened in class. He called me, and I said, no, don't you say anything. You have whoever wants to see you, call me, because I want to know the nature. And so I am against even principles or even behavior talking to our students, but at least just notifying the parent. I don't have to be there, but just notify. I just believe they should notify to say, hey, listen, we had an incident in school. We are going to be interviewing 20 kids and your son one of them. Okay, fine. But not to hear anything from the school or from the school days later, that's concerning.
And I really get that, and if that's what you want us to do, we will. If one of those 20 parents objected, would you then stop the investigation?
No, but there'd just be that one child, because then the one child, if the parents say, no, I don't want you to see my son or daughter unless I'm there, I think that's their right. And so that child would not be interviewed, but everybody else, most parents probably would consent. I don't foresee that being an issue. And most of them you may not be able to reach at that time, but I'm just saying, for practice, just let me know. The incident took place at school, just like if we had a fight or if someone was injured, we're gonna do a call. Just let the parents know something happened, your daughter or your son was interviewed, so that we are aware. I think it's awareness.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Haynes.
Okay, so there's been some different things talked about. Having been a teacher, you know, I had to make that call years ago to DCF. DCF to me is an entirely different situation, all right, because we're charged by state law to have to make that call. Everyone knows that that student then is interviewed, because we're not allowed, you know, there's rules on how many times they can be interviewed. But I don't think what we're talking about today is that. What I think we're talking about is, yes, there's a school-based thing where the teacher may even have to say, you know, who did this today in the classroom, and may ask each student, or the administrator. But what I picked up on, though, is when it comes to professional standards, and I wrote down the steps that you said you move forward with the investigations if you believe there's been misconduct by the adult, the employed adult. So unless I misunderstood something, this young lady was called in to be questioned, and it was in reference to an employed adult, or more than one, on campus. So to me, that's an entirely higher level of investigation when your office comes in and you bring in your, Rob, who I know very well, versus the teacher or the assistant principal or even the principal questioning maybe something that happened at lunch, okay? Like maybe somebody set the lunch, can on fire or whatever. That's different because it's not about an employee that you're questioning that student. So I just feel when we put our students into a situation where we need to investigate them and it's going to lead to either confirming misconduct of an adult or whatever, parents, I'm sorry, but I'm a parent and now I'm a grandparent, and I would be very upset if my daughter came home, because I can tell you right now, she would have come home in tears, crying that she was placed somewhere to be investigated and that I was not notified by you or your investigator, because that's a whole different ball game going on.
And I hear you. I guess what I would just, we're not investigating the child. Never are we
But you're
investigating the child.
asking them
We're asking the child
questions.
questions,
And
okay? No different than.
you're asking them to give up information, though, that unfortunately we live in a society right now, and this is, you can disagree with me, where retaliation happens on a daily basis, okay? So that student is being put in a situation where they may give you the information that it's, yes, I want them to be honest, but I want them to feel safe in being honest. I don't want them to feel intimidated. I don't want them to feel unsafe or feeling like, well, if I tell what I really know, that I'm going to now be in trouble, or make up some other different story because they don't feel safe. I think, I'm sorry, we're not their parents and they're still underage, and I don't know, and I'm not talking about a lunchroom incident, okay? I'm talking about something where it's going to result in a teacher being reprimanded, or, anybody that's employed, a bus driver, whatever.
Mr. Cologne.
All right, so I'm the odd man out here because this is all news to me. Piggybacking off of what they said, going back to realistic expectations, if we're talking about who threw a garbage can or did the teacher throw the garbage can, we would contact parents, and a parent will then have a decision to make whether it's okay or not. Number one, it's very concerning to me that we don't have any procedures around this. This isn't new for me, because I've said this about many other things. I think that makes this a very subjective nature, and I think that a lot of the feedback that I've received over time, this explains why that is. So I have several questions. Number one, what are the different ways in which an employee can, or anybody for that matter, can report something to professional standards that we have available right now?
Any way that they can actually physically communicate with us. They can show up at the front desk and ask to be seen. They can call, they can email. I've received text messages. I've had them call the anonymous fraud hotline. I've had them obviously speak directly to board members. I've had them go to their department chairs. Any way that a person can reach out either in writing or verbally, they can make their way with a complaint towards us.
Do we have any third-party ways in which someone can anonymously, because a lot of corporations have a third-party agent who collects the complaint and sends it to the business and says, this is what the complaint was, here you go. And so my reason for asking is this. If I am calling professional standards, hi, I would like to report a complaint against Mr. Robert Olette. I'm speaking to the employee of Mr. Robert Olette, and so that way that complaint is taken, the way that complaint is worded, may not open up for what we would like to feel is an anonymous nature. And I think that, and this is something as a board we may need to look at, and I think there are business models for this, a third-party way for folks to really feel comfortable calling. I've heard folks say, I called professional standards and I said I had an issue with XYZ, and they said, that could never be, I've known him forever. That whole process just went out the window right there because of that simple, innocent, it wasn't meant to be taken in a way that, but because we are human, because we've worked with these folks for however many years you've been in the district, it is almost impossible to separate ourselves from the people that we like. And so, you know, not having, you know, again, not having procedures, and I think that that's something that I think we should look into. And again, large corporations use third parties for that same reason, to give that feeling of anonymously. So my next question is, who determines probable cause to move? Go ahead.
Can I answer the anonymous?
Go ahead.
Okay. One, by state statute, we can't put an anonymous complaint in a personnel file. So it can't be the sole purpose for an investigation. Okay. The other piece of the puzzle is myself and the whole staff have been through the SHRM internal investigations training course. SHRM, the Human Resources Professional Organization. And we take our job seriously and professional. I would take issue with anyone that would think that I would come into this with an implicit bias. I wouldn't have taken the position if I thought that's what we were coming into. We call balls and strikes as balls and strikes. Nobody shows up at a game in a striped jersey rooting on the umpire. By definition, people who have brought the complaint are either happy with our results or unhappy with our results. If they're unhappy with our results, obviously there had to have been a fault some way, because we didn't see the issue the way they saw the issue. And when you get to a third party, the fear is a feedback loop, okay? And we have some of that going on occasion. I could cite specific opportunities where folks elicit a complaint, we look at the complaint, then that same complaint, they go ahead and do a public records request on the results of the complaint, turn around and post the results of the complaint, but it's a complaint they started in the first place, and it was unfounded. So an anonymous complaint can lead you down rabbit's holes that I think that was the purpose for state statute, not to go ahead and allow those to become part of personnel files.
Well, I don't so much mean anonymous in the way, whereas the information is taken by a third party rather than someone. And again, I didn't mean, and I apologize if it came through that I'm saying that there's an implicit bias. I think there's a human, if you call me on my best friend and say, hey, you know, your best friend did that, my first reaction is going to be, no, they didn't. I've known them forever. There's absolutely no way. And so that's my very first reaction. And so again, I'm putting it out there, and just for something to, because that's how big businesses, you know, ethics hotlines are ethics hotlines. And in my organization, I could call the ethics hotline. I have no idea who's on the other side. And I could say, you know, this happened on this unit, and they'll go and investigate, did it happen? Well, yes, it did happen, because I said Ruben Colon knew about it, and I went and asked Ruben Colon, and he said, yes, I did know about it. Now you've got, and so it gives us the opportunity to, you know, we're a big organization, and so that's a thought. Who determines the probable cause? You said the complaint comes in, and then we determine whether or not to move forward with that investigation. Who determines that probable cause?
We don't operate on the standard of probable cause. That's a criminal standard. What we do is we take the initial complaint, and then we go ahead and apply it to basically a standard of reasonable suspicion. Does it rise to a level that this could be misconduct in according to what I talked about as far as statutes? That's our starting point. That's not our end point. There are times where folks come to us with complaints that even if what they said is true, it's not misconduct. You may have not liked the person and they may have been mean, but it's not misconduct, and we're not going to take that issue. There are other occasions when the complaint comes our way. We measure it according to that standard and determine that we'll talk with the school level folks, and this is probably best handled within your department or your school level.
So who handles the decision to we won't call it probable cause. Who decides whether or not it rises to? Do we have a panel that decides that? Do we have folks who are removed from the original, from the latter group that look at it maybe from the outside and decide, okay, because if you, and I'm used to probable cause panels. And so usually and so I use my experience on the Florida Board of Respiratory Care. The two folks who are on the probable cause panel can't vote when it comes before the whole board. And so I have more information than the other members of the board do because I was determining probable cause. And I can tell you it's very challenging sometimes because you're in that position and you determined there was probable cause, but you can't say a word because the board has to make a decision, the remaining members of the board have to make a decision based on the information that is in front of them without having additional information. And so when we decide that it rises to the level, if it's the same group, and again, this is all procedural, if it's the same group who's going to decide later whether or not there was an offense or a violation of standards, et cetera, of statute, whatever the case may be, then I think that, again, that may be something we can look at because, you know, if we don't have it, if we don't make this objective, it's going to remain subjective. And if we can make it objective and say, okay, Ruben Colon stole something, well, that likely violates because it was found on him. Okay, well, that moves on. Now we do an investigation and decide and put our resources into that. So again, just going back to procedure, and I don't know how that could be, if it even applies in education. I'm just putting that out there. Another thing is legibility of investigation. And, you know, we've gotten some recent documents from the investigation that I couldn't even read. And so if I can't read it, and I'm used to doctor writing, you know, that's a legal record. And so, again, just something we may want to look at in our process. Go ahead.
The actual investigation summary is typed. I think you're talking to notes. Notes are work product. You know, we include the notes in this county as a courtesy. I would tell you, based on past practice with particularly the union. For example, Seminole County's investigations don't include their work product, don't include their notes. So our notes are basically the result of past practice, not something that are a requirement in the investigation, because the notes are converted into the summary.
That's fair. And again, it goes back to process. So if we decide that we want the notes included, then it would help if they're legible. Then I have another question. So how does someone recuse themselves due to a bias? So let's say I worked for Jamie Hain, and so you mentioned who the members of this committee are. Let's say I worked for Jamie Hain. Can Jamie Hain truly make a decision based on her fact that I was her boss and we worked together for 20 years?
I would argue that a lot of times these folks are already their bosses. As area superintendents, for example, this could be coming out of a school where they have supervisory responsibilities. When these are returned to the school level, the actual supervisor is the one making the determination on the level. So the fact that they have worked with an employee in the past doesn't automatically prejudge that there would be an issue. That being said, there are investigations that I have not taken and given to the investigator based on the fact that I have worked at that school and I have worked with that employee. I'm in a unique circumstance, unlike the rest of my office, where I've worked in the school setting. So I will tell you that there are schools that have. I will go to a school and work with a case if the employee was not there when I was there, but I have not taken a particular case as a result of the fact that given it off to the investigators because I know that I've worked with that employee in the past.
And so again, I think it goes to procedure and circling back to what.
Ruben, I would just like to add this one point, just to give a specific example. There has been a case And I can't give any recognizable facts to a ongoing case. But I will tell you specifically, Mr. Ouellette has asked me to ask someone to recuse themselves. So I don't know that there's a written process, but I do know that he practices a judgment, and if he thinks that the people who will be voting on this might be too close to it or are somehow even potentially kind of associated with it, he already in the last month, he's asked me to talk to someone and see if they would recuse themselves.
Right, and that's fair, but, you know, again, that was very professional and kind, but again, going back to procedurally, there are things that may come before the board here that I already know that, you know, I can speak to, but I can't vote on. And so, and the other part is, I do think that, you know, going back to the parent and the notification, and unfortunately, in my short time, I've gotten several calls, whether it's involving this or anything else that we've interviewed a student about. I think we are opening ourselves up to a vulnerability. As we heard from the mom today, we're really opening ourselves up to a vulnerability. And so I think that, you know, understanding Amy Hall's world and their understanding of counselors and student and human behavior and perception of a student and what that looks like, I think that may help us should we opt to develop formal processes around this.
Mr.
Chairman,
Ms.
if I
Wright,
might,
and then, go ahead, Stacy, you want to respond?
Well, just in generally to the discussion,
Yep.
there is a fine line, I'll say, between you know, additional layers of processes and procedures. Well, that has to be weighed against the statutory right of the teachers to have a quick determination and investigation and completion of that. You know, they do have a right that be done within a reasonable amount of time, given the extent of the investigation. So I just want to put that out there, that, you know, that we do have to weigh the additional benefit to whatever you all may want to do against, you know, the protections afforded to the teacher.
And I guess the only thing that I would add is I'd say over 50% of the investigations as far as the initial student statements actually come from the schools. Okay, so that would be another piece that if you're looking at policy, you'll have to think about that. Where are you going to go with as far as the assistant principals having these discussions? Because they're giving us the written statements the majority of the time. You know, it's only in some of the bigger investigations that we're actually coming out and doing a second follow-up on where we are with student statements, or we see a need for additional student statements where I've pulled the class at random every odd number. The other piece of the puzzle is if we're looking at going down this road with some policy regarding the notification piece, I'd recommend maybe tasking me with the chance to talk to the other professional standards offices around the larger districts and see how they deal with the issue as far as you know, interviewing students. Because by no means am I saying in, you know, 13 months am I an expert in all things professional standards.
Ms. Wright, then Ms. Cuthbert.
And actually, that was going to be my question or recommendation. So either you, Mr. Ouellette, or you, Mr. Manning, to find out what other districts, how do they handle their professional standards, and what policies and procedures are already in place so that we maybe take a look at that. I was going to ask Superintendent Egner from the district that you came from. Did they have policies and procedures in place as it came to professional standards or whatever you called it?
It was very similar to what we do here. It was run out of HR, though, I will say that. It was an HR function. As far as could students be interviewed? Yes. Did notice have to be given? No. Was that in all cases? You had to show judgment. Did the school usually do the first steps? Yes. So it was very, very similar. There could be differences because that is not the area. I did not supervise that area. That was in HR. But I fully support the notion, I think the board feels this way too, that we can always improve, and that I cannot see a downside to having Mr. Manning, Mr. Ouellette check out how other districts do it and why they do it. And that's important as
Yeah.
well.
And if it's working, yeah. Ms. Cuthbert?
I don't think any of us are questioning the professional attitude and behavior of your department. I think personally I think you're well fitted for your position. And when you were appointed, I was very delighted because you bring such a wealth of experience and having children yourself and being a teacher as well as a principal at all levels, you're very well qualified. I think what we are concerned about is transparency. We may understand, and I perfectly understand the minor offenses that happen on a campus. Most students do recognize and are aware of their assistant principals and principals. I think where we're concerned is the more major, especially in the student conduct, the major offenses, either by a teacher, an employee, or a student, that a student's parents be notified if it's a serious issue. In the last couple of years, we've had some very unfortunate incidents and accusations of sexual misconduct, and your office has investigated. When it comes to very sensitive, whether it's a violent fight in a cafeteria, whether it's major offenses, I think that's when we are particularly looking for if a student is involved as a witness, parents be notified. If it's just turning a kitchen table upside down in a cafeteria, we perfectly understand you need to do the witnesses. But we want to protect our students, we want to protect our employees, but we also, like for the committee who is, that you go to, maybe change it up once every 6 or 7 months, have different directors or different members of the cabinet. Just not that they're not doing a good job, it's just the fact of transparency. To help what Mr. Colon say, do a different mix so that it just appears that because anybody can say, well, it looks like you guys work together, so of course you're going to stick together. Even though they're not doing it, it may appear to the public that that's what's happening. So I think that's what we're most concerned with, I believe, is the issue of transparency to the public. Because I don't think we're too concerned about how you operate. It's just that we want to protect our employees and our students and be transparent and be fair. Especially when you send your investigators in, that can be a little scary.
If I could, I would like to mention one other nuance to this, which hasn't been explored, and I'm sure there's many things when they do their research they'll be explored. I think it's remiss not to point out that many of these investigations that are that are in discussion originate from the students coming in to make a statement. The student comes in to complain about something that a teacher or a staff member did. When they come in to make that complaint, they're filing a statement, and then they're usually asked questions. So the other side of this coin isn't our response to that, should parents be notified and all that, but if a student comes in and wants to file a complaint, should the administration not accept it unless parents have been notified that their student have come in to file a complaint against someone?
So I have a better question. So what is the practice now? So if my son came in to file a complaint against Mrs. Haynes, you accept the complaint, what happened? Do you ever contact me? What happens?
Here's what I have learned. One, in statute, there's a requirement that we contact a parent at the disposition of the investigation, at the point where the issue has been gone through and grieved. Okay, so there's a place at that point. It doesn't have to be a formal letter. We need to make sure the parents know the disposition of the issue. When an initial complaint takes place, quite often it's going to the assistant principal. Now I can give you 18 different scenarios where the assistant principal isn't in his office at the time that comes in, particularly at a secondary school, where the kid is actually, unfortunately, fills out the statement on a clipboard. The assistant principal comes back from lunch duty, reads the clipboard and goes, "Oh my goodness," and then goes and gets that student. In a perfect world, when the complaint occurs, that administrator at the school level will immediately talk with them. What most often happens is then we get a call from that administrator, usually at the direction of the principal, or the principal actually calls and says, hey, I just had a student come in, I've got a statement here. I'll usually say, send it to me so we can take a look, let me read it, and then I'll give you a call right back. And then from that point, we proceed. I'll also tell you that if it looks like something that is going to be criminal in nature, we immediately step out and call law enforcement. And law enforcement isn't automatically going to notify the parent. They're going to sit down with that student. I've been actually through instances where I walked into an instance and it appeared to be one thing. I started talking to the student and I realized, oh, this is going to be criminal. I'm done talking with this student. At that point, I walked down the hall and I got the SRD, the school resource deputy, and I stepped out. Once a criminal investigation has begun, we do no more investigating. We sit it out. After the criminal investigation is either done and the state attorney charges and is a disposition, then we take all that information back and then we try and come behind them. Or if it's actually closed, and same thing is true with DCF. If there's an active DCF investigation, we stop until DCF tells us that their investigation is closed, either with finding.
Yes, Ms. Wright.
Just follow up. So would that be the very same process? So let's remove the student out of this conversation for just a second. So if, as a teacher, I go file a complaint against another teacher or administrator, is that the same process?
It's the same process, but you've just cut out the administrator. I've been contacted by teachers directly, and if the complaint isn't specifically against the administrator and there's no administrative angle to it, then I'll touch base with the administrator. But if the teacher's complaint is about that administrator, that principal, I'm not going to have that initial discussion with that principal. Hey, man, I just got this complaint. We're going to go ahead and start taking a look at the complaint first and the investigation, just like we would with any other.
I should also point out in regards to Mr. Ouellette's comment about if it goes to DCF or there's criminal investigation, then the professional standards investigation is put on hold. That's just till they're complete. The outside agency investigation is complete. At that point, if the outside agency doesn't take action, that doesn't necessarily mean that professional standards and the professional standards committee isn't still going to recommend action based upon their own independent investigation.
And I will say that when those investigations are in place, the employee is paid on administrative leave if there's a DCF or a criminal investigation.
So I hear what you're saying. I think in my short time, we've had examples where just that has happened. Law enforcement has become involved, and and just something to consider. And as we work on some policies, and we've taken our hands off of it. We said, okay, that's law enforcement's problem, and we later found out that maybe we never close the loop. And so, anytime we have an opportunity to close a loop, that would help, rather than simply saying, okay, the police took it over, we're going to leave this alone, and it's no longer our problem, arguably, because the employee is still our employee.
And we always close the loop. We're not touching it at that moment. I apologize if I didn't communicate that well. We are not interfering in the ongoing investigation. Correct. When that investigation is complete and closed, and either the state attorney has decided to prosecute and there's a disposition, or they have dropped the case, at that point we pick it up and we take it to disposition.
Yeah, and so again, I think, like I said, just recently we had an example. I've only been here a short time, and I've seen that. Another thing is, so let's say I am a teacher and a student acts up, I curse the student and I hit the student, let's say. Technically, does that count as one act of professional conduct violation, or do we look at each one individually? So you struck a student and you cursed. Not so when the finding comes out, is it we found you in violation of professional standards, here's your 2-week reprimand, or your reprimand, or your suspension, or whatever the outcome may be? Or do we say, for this, for this, so, you know, for you cursing at the student, you get a reprimand, but for you striking the student? Or do we generally just say there was misconduct and here you go? Because I may have violated several different
And that's what's referenced actually in the disposition letter. So in the disposition letter, it would say, for example, a letter of reprimand with 5 days unpaid suspension. And then the next line would list for X, Y, and Z, because there are times where there'll be multiple allegations, and it turns out that you know, 1 or 2 of them actually did not occur or were unsubstantiated because we could not prove those. In that case, they may be listed in the initial allegation in the investigation summary, but they're not listed as part of the disposition because those were not provable.
Great.
Further questions? Further questions? No? All right, well, I think, Mr. Superintendent, I think that the board wanted to get some input, find out what's going on in some other districts. Never hurts to see if there's something that we can tweak ours and come get a little bit better.
Continuous improvement.
I will just say, in all of my years as principal and dealing with it and interviewing, I don't know how many students, but when professional standards comes into the school, they generally check in with the office, and they would contact me and say, hey, we're here because of this case, we'd like to interview so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. Could be adults, could be teachers, it could be adults or teachers, of course, but could be students. And so then they would find a little office space, and then we would contact the teacher would come down, they'd get interviewed, leave, we'd call the next one in, and it wouldn't take more than professional standards be on campus about 15 minutes, and the whole school would know. Somebody's in trouble, you know, somebody's in trouble. But they always did their job so well, and when I did have students that were to be interviewed, I would go in there with the student, and I would introduce the person from professional standards, say, this is Mr. So-and-so, he's here to talk to you about an incident that occurred yesterday, wherever it was. And oftentimes I did say, do you want me to stay here, or are you good? And they would say, I'm good, you know. I said, okay, good, you know, bye. And so there are certain ways, and you have to know each of your individual children too. But I just want to commend your office. They do the work that, you know, there's a lot of things that happen. There's a lot of allegations made now too that aren't true, and they really need to sift through it. I mean, we have students that make up things that they said the teacher did, and we find out after interviewing 3 or 4 or 5 more students, the teacher didn't do that, what this student said. So that you just gotta take the time, be willing to put the time in to make the investigation thorough. And I know it is not an easy job. I know it's a thankless job, I'm sure. But it's a job that needs to be done, and needs to be done right. And if we can make it any better for our students and for our employees and for our parents, then that's what we need to do. Ms. Cuthbert.
Just one more anecdote. I think it's very important, whoever does the discipline on any campus has to be a very sensitive but very stern. I mean, that you're asking one individual to do a great deal to become Solomon. But several years ago, I don't know if Mr. Egner, you know this, several years ago, this board made a commitment to our middle schools, where we know that's where a lot of the behavior begins to exhibit itself. And we assigned an additional TOA to help investigate some of the misbehaviors, especially the students who are constantly in trouble. Some middle schools assigned all the discipline to that TOA to free up the other APs. That was not the intent of that. That TOA at our middle schools was supposed to be an enhancement to assist those students to cope, to really sit down and go, okay, what is it that happened? What's going on? And not just to send the student back, but to start finding solutions for that student. And then there is an AP at the middle school to handle discipline, but that TOA was supposed to be the investigative person to bring in the mental health, to work with parents more, to be the bridge between parents, the school, and the student. And hopefully that is still happening right now. But we did try that, 2 years ago, and we have not rescinded that effort. So we're hoping that some of this behavior, especially from our students, starts early. And maybe we can start seeing, and we did that based on the faith organization.
Yeah.
To help reduce the suspensions, at least at the middle school level. So thank you. That's one of the first nicknames I learned the very first year I taught here, was your department's name when you come on campus. Oh yeah, it was the first. It was called the Death Angel.
Oh, my.
Thank you. It's definitely an oxymoron. So thank you so much for all
Thank
all
you,
what you do.
both. So you all work hand in hand, and I see that.
Every day.
Every day. Wow, that's amazing. Any further comment, Mr. Superintendent?
No, thank you, and I'm so happy that the chairman referenced what a thankless, continuous job that you have, and every day, no one envies you the hundreds of judgments you have to make, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah. All right then. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
are completed that item, and that means we have anybody that wishes to address the board. So then, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to adjourn this meeting, and we'll be back at 5:30. 5:30 for.
She can do the presentation now.
She can do the presentation.
Yes,
Yes.
she can do the presentation and then you
You
can.
just
do
can't
public
vote
hearing.
and do anything until we have the public hearing.
Well then, yeah. If the board wants to do that, we can do that now. Let's just keep on going.
You need a break? Any of you all need a break?
No, we can't
Wait.
do that.
Miss Muller, would you please come forward and just qualify that?
You just have to.
We can't start
I-
till 5:01 by statute, but we can start at 5 o'clock. She can do the presentation. We can have citizen input at 5:30, and then we can meet.
Oh, you're saying she can't even start presenting to 5?
She can't start presenting until 5.
Oh, okay, we might as well take a journey. Okay.
5:30 it is.
Wait, hello, Miss Muller. How are
Hello.
you? Hi.
My suggestion would be just for continuity that we come back at 5 and start that so that we go from the presentation to the public hearing right after that.
Okay.
Which
and
is date, or is time certain at 5:30.
it is a time certain. I understand that. And
Yes.
And do you anticipate like a 30-minute presentation, or?
I
mean,
can make
just
it
don't
as
want like
shorter,
a-
as long as you'd like.
Not that we want you to fill the gap here or anything, but,
No,
all right.
I would say probably a half hour with questions.
Okay.
And we don't have to start it at 5:30, just
right.
not before 5:30. So
Okay.
if we go a little longer, we just do the public hearing
Okay, board members,
after
so you see it's about 4:45 almost, so when do you want to come back? It's up to you.
At 5.
At 5? At 5. 5 it is. We'll come back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening once again, and we're going to go ahead and start with our budget presentation. Officer, good evening.
Good evening, Chairman Persis, board members, and Superintendent Egner. This is the tentative budget hearing and presentation for fiscal year 2019-20 that I will be presenting. So the tax increase over the rolled back rate is 5.882 mils. That is the property tax levy that will, after the value of new construction is deducted, produce the same amount of revenue as the previous year. The proposed rate of 6.081 mils is 3.39% higher than the rolled back rate. Therefore, this is advertised as an ad valorem tax increase. Excuse me for 1 second. I don't know, I think this square might be a little off from the camera. I don't know if you can adjust it at all. Okay. I just know it's going to affect our presentation.
You're good.
Don't want to show any not show numbers. Okay, good, perfect, thank you. Okay. This next slide represents our millage levy comparison, and this is a breakdown between the different types of levies that we actually have. Fiscal year 20, as of the second calc, we are levying 3.819 mils as the required local effort. The prior period funding adjustment millage is 0.014 mils. The discretionary operating millage, 0.748 mils. Capital outlay, 1.5 mils, for a total of 6.081 mils. The state taxing authority compels us to levy the required local effort and the prior period funding adjustment millage. The local school board taxing authority is given for the discretionary operating millage and the capital outlay, the 1.5 mils. The fiscal year 20 property tax calculation based on that 6.081 mils. The assessed property value is $147,135. This actually comes to us from the property tax assessor each year, and last year's average was $137,894. The homestead exemption of $25,000 is deducted from that assessed property value to give you your taxable value of $122,135. With the fiscal year 20 millage levy of 6.081, there would be a tax amount due of $742.70. On our budget calendar, we have gone all the way through July to this 30th public hearing and adoption of the tentative millage rates and tentative district budget. We received the RLE millage and certification from DOE on July 19th, and if you remember correctly, that is why we moved this hearing 1 week later, because we did not have time to advertise that in the paper for 3 days prior to our meeting. After the adoption of this proposed budget, the tentative budget, then we will be working with the superintendent and the property appraiser during August, and then on September 10th, we will have the public hearing and adoption of the final budget, which the superintendent will then certify within 3 business days. Just to recap a little bit about the budget and where we are, as you can see, this is the statewide base student allocation, which we have presented throughout our presentations leading up to this point. The BSA is $4,279.49, and that is set by the legislature as well. And just looking at the 2007-08 BSA, this dotted line here, you can see pre-recession we were at $4,163.47, and that is certainly not, has certainly not kept up with inflation. And I think it's really important to note that although we did get an increase in the BSA of $75 this year, last year the increase was 47 cents. And if you factor in inflation from fiscal year 08 until now, we're looking at 23.5% inflation over that time, yet the increase from fiscal year 08 to fiscal year 20 in the BSA is 2.8%. And that leads us to one of the major issues with balancing our budget. One of the other issues here is the required local effort. You can see that the millage rate since 2010-11 has steadily decreased, and again, this is set by the legislature and is different for each county school district. And you can see for 1920, it's 3.819. Meanwhile, the tax roll, that increase has resulted in large increases in our property taxable value. From last year to this year, there's an increase of 8.4%. That represents $3 billion increase from last year to this year in taxable value. But yet by the legislature decreasing the millage rate, we do not recoup any of that money based on the increases in taxable values. The other area that we always talk about, of course, is the DCD, and you can see the cumulative amount that Volusia has lost since the inception of this current formula is almost $161 million more than any other district in the state. And this year, like last year, we lost $10 million due to the DCD, which represents $161.99 per student. I know that the legislature and DOE will be revisiting the DCD and presenting that in October of 19. However, until we see what that formula looks like, I'm skeptical that that will help us at all. But we do have more seats at the table, so to speak, and hopefully that will help school districts. As far as our district summary budget, here you can see the total budget as compared to 18-19. And this is not only just our general operating, but it's all funds compared. We have general operating, capital projects, special revenue, debt service, and internal service. The comparison over the 2 years, our budget increased 3.9%. 1920 is a total of $995 million versus a total of $868.5 million last year. And if you look at page 4 of your budget booklet, that does show you the side-by-side comparison. We do have a shift from the proportionate share of each fund this year based on last year. And part of the reason is the capital projects in the board's decision to bond the $100 million, and also the debt service, which we will pay a portion of debt service in this fiscal year. So that has shifted the proportion of capital fund to the total piece as it relates to all of the funds. In capital, of course, in general, we'll address later in the presentation, but capital, we have budgeted for Deltona Middle School, George Marks, and there's also a $10 million carryover from Chisholm because we have not made all of the payments on that as it's not finished, as well as the transfer to debt service for the bond interest. The debt service also shows an increase in interest because of that bond. In special revenue, we have a decrease in Schoolway Cafe, and mostly that is due to a shift in eligibility from federal income qualifications. So it has decreased the number of eligible free and reduced lunch participants and increased the amount of full payments. So therefore, they're adjusting their budget to align more with the reimbursement that they anticipate. They also have a decrease in their capital outlay expense. They've completed a large warehouse renovation and dining room projects. And so this budget next year has a minimum amount of new projects. Also in federal grants, under Title I, we have an increase in UNICEF grants that schools are eligible of $1.4 million and an increase of $2.3 million due to 21st Century grants. This is the FEFP second calculation. If you remember, last time we presented the conference budget, which is the one adopted by the legislature and approved by the governor. This is the second calculation, and we have an increase overall of $806,964 over the conference budget. And mostly that is due to an increase in the taxable school value of $925 million. And it's offset somewhat by the required local effort that the legislature, when set in the final amount, was adjusted downward. That led to a decrease in our state funding under the 0.748 mils compression adjustment, and that's offset by the discretionary local effort of $664,000. Also under the new category of turnaround school supplements, that increased to over $1 million, and that was based on 4 schools that are either exiting or in turnaround status. Under our general operating revenue summary, you can see that we have an increase in total revenue from fiscal year 19 adopted budget to the fiscal year 20 adopted budget of $10.5 million. The major changes in the revenues, other than the FEFP, which we just discussed, there was a decrease in E-rate revenue of $1.2 million. And other local revenues will be amended in during the fiscal year as we receive them. As you can see, under the fiscal year 19 estimated actuals, we have $7.9 million, almost $8 million in other state. And also under other local, we have $11.7 million under actual. So those grants and other receipts that we get during the year are then amended into the budget. And our ad valorem taxes, which is part of the FEFP calculation, but you can see that increase in the collection amount from $174.9 million to $181.1 million next year. The certified tax roll, $41.188,256,745. The adjustment factor of 0.00096 is what under statute we can budget for. We cannot budget for the total tax levy that we will levy. And again, the required local effort millage of 3.819 will result in $151 million being levied, and the prior period funding adjustment millage will result in $553,570 for a total non-discretionary of $152,113,175. And then your board authority discretionary 0.748 will result in $29,576,463 being levied. Under the general operating appropriation summary, you can see that budget to budget, we have an increase in $13.8 million. And on page 10 of the booklet, there that is further broken down. The net change from our last presentation is an increase of approximately $500,000, and that is based on the projected costs for dual enrollment courses. We had a offsetting decrease in the reimbursement that DSC gives us back for administering the programs from 22 to 13%. The estimated actuals from fiscal year 19, just to point out the instruction line at the top, the budget was $317 million. The actuals came in, and this is estimate still because we are making entries, but $303 million. The McKay Scholarship, which we budget under instruction, we never actually expend. It's deducted by the state from our FEFP revenue, so that money is never spent. That is about $3.8 million. Also, the raises were not as much as anticipated, and we also last year had a decrease in school staffing units overall. Fiscal year 20 budget to fiscal year 19 budget, the differences there are due to raises, the retirement rate, FRS increase, and an increase in school staffing, and then that's offset by an additional salary lapse and teacher retirement savings. Under the district administration, there are several areas that I wanted to just point out. In function 7100, and again, if you look on page 10 of the booklet, that has the categories broken down further. So under district administration, function 7100, which is the board, we have a budget increase due to adding the internal auditor as well as the superintendent search cost and the district audit, and we also have a carryover PO for outside legal services. Under function 7200, which is general administration, we have a carryover PO for outside legal services as well as one administrator on assignment position that will be deleted for the final budget, but it is in here currently. Function 7400 is facilities acquisition and construction, and that increase is due to the LCIF charter school disbursements. That is actually what the legislature passes through. They approve it in the budget, and then it's passed through, and we bring that from capital into general, and then we pay the charters for that. So that was an increase over the previous year. And then under operation of plant, you can see that increase is due to a increase in utilities and safe school allocations for guardians, as well as some carryover in the guardian program. And again, these numbers, will likely change somewhat, slightly during between now and the final budget, just because we're making year-end entries. So your fiscal year 20 general fund operating budget, the total of $509,600,274. This is broken down by function, and you can see under the functional categories, that instruction and instructional support accounts for 72% of our total budget. Operation of maintenance of plant is 11, school administration 7, and 5 for district administration, 4% for pupil transportation, and then 1% for community and debt service. And as compared to fiscal year 2018-19, the instructional total actually decreased 1% and transportation increased 1%. Otherwise, they were the same as the previous year. Under object codes, salary and benefits account for 79% of our total budget. The purchase service is 13%, which is a decrease of 1% from the prior year. Materials and supplies, 4%. Energy services increased from 2 to 3% this year, and then 1% capital outlay and other services. In the fund balance, estimated actual, again, this is likely to change somewhat too as we do our closing entries, because we do one of our large entries, what we pay in July, is terminal leave payouts as people retire and leave the district. We do have those that are paid in July. So currently you can see that the assigned state and local estimate is $16.7 million. And then to balance the budget, we have $9.6 million. The unassigned has gone from $27.6 million to $23 million for next year. The percent unassigned to revenue, which your minimum that the board has in policy is 3%, and your goal of 5%. So at 4.9%, we're just slightly under the board's goal of 5%. Our financial condition ratio, which is the total unassigned and assigned, as compared to our revenue, our budgeted revenue, is 10.52%, which is a small decrease from the prior year. This is the historical look at those rates, those financial condition ratios, and the unassigned fund balance. And the concerns that we still have as we're finishing up the budget is where will our enrollment projections come in? As you know, that we actually projected a small decrease in enrollment, but hopefully all of those students will show up. We do know that there has been an increase in the charter school requested enrollments. So we do not know if those will come from out of the district or they will come from our schools. We also have not set funds aside for additional teaching units that may be needed. And then on our third calculation, we could possibly receive a proration to the appropriation. And again, just to refresh what that means is that the budget ceiling that the state sets is based on the enrollment that's projected statewide. And so if that calculation comes in higher than the total budget, then they do have to reallocate that based on your FTE. And so we have lost sufficient amounts of money in the past. In the last couple of years, we haven't had a proration, or it's been very small. So, but again, that's a statewide proration depending on enrollment. Also, the recalculation of base funding and allocations on FTE Survey 2, which happens in October, and then results in those adjustments that we may see in December or January on our third calc. And again, the use of, excuse me, the unassigned fund balance to offset and balance our budget. We certainly cannot continue to use non-recurring revenue to balance our budget and expect to have a fund balance that the board has a 5% goal, as well as to maintain our financial condition ratio that is mandated by statute. So those are the concerns as we move forward in this area. And any questions that I can answer?
Very well done. Very well done, Ms. Miller. And I know that's a lot of work, and congratulations to you and your staff for putting this all together in a very readable and understandable fashion, as every municipality is going through this this weekend and next week as we try to adopt each budget. Yes, Mr. Colon.
So I have a question. So this time last year, the fine reporter Cassidy Alexander just gotten here, reported that Volusia County was in a 2.9 budget shortfall, et cetera. Are we projecting that we are going to be at a shortfall from budgeted to actual budget for last year?
At this time, we're not exactly sure. We actually budgeted $3.2 million from fund balance in the final budget last year. Right now, if you look at our total budget, this slide does not include the entire fund balance, because the other ones they're set aside for specific purposes and are not flexible at all. But overall, our fund balance decreased by $1.3 million.
So that was our actual deficit then, we're tapping into our fund balance 1.3 versus 2.5.
Right. Well, we had said in our final budget $3.2 million.
3.2.
However, one thing I would just want to point out is under that state and local assigned last year, we did know that we had that refund from health insurance, and that was close to $6 million. And we knew that we were going to spend that. Initially, we had proposed that we use that for bonuses when we were negotiating. In the end, some of that was used for raises, and that's the recurring piece that, unfortunately, now, has come back to be a problem to balance our budget this year.
Okay, it is 5:30, and that's our official time to open the public hearing on the budget. At this time, is there any members of the public that wish to speak? Okay, then we are closing the public hearing part. Ms. Muller, do you have the resolution, or is it Mr. Egner, one of you would
I do have the
be
resolution
reading, and
to
then a
read.
recommendation from the superintendent, and then we'll proceed.
Okay. The School Board of Volusia County, Florida, resolution number 2019-26, a resolution of the School Board of Volusia County, Florida, levying the tentative ad valorem property tax millage rate for 2019-2020 required local effort prior period adjustment, discretionary operating, additional operating for the general fund, and district discretionary local capital improvement for the capital funds, and debt service for the district debt service funds on all taxable property within Volusia County, Florida for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending June 30th, 2020, stating the percentage by which the millage to be levied is higher than the rollback rate, repealing all resolutions in conflict therewith, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. Whereas the School Board of Volusia County, Florida is authorized under the Constitution and laws of Florida to levy a tax upon non-exempt real property lying and situated in Volusia County, Florida for public school purposes. And whereas the required public notice has been given and the public has been given an opportunity to be heard and to ask questions concerning the tentative millage rate for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. And whereas all matters required by law pursuant to the adoption of the tentative millage rate for 2019-2020 have been accomplished. Now therefore be it resolved by the School Board of Volusia County, Florida, in official session duly assembled in DeLand, Florida, this 30th day of July 2019 as follows. One, that the following millage rates be tentatively adopted for potential levy upon all taxable real property lying and situated in Volusia County, Florida for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. A, for the required local effort, 3.819. B, for the required local effort, prior period adjustment, 0.014. C, for the discretionary operating effort, 0.748. D, for discretionary local capital improvement, 1.500. And E, for the debt service, 0, for a total millage rate of 6.081. The total millage rate for fiscal year 2019-2020 of 6.081 mills, as calculated excluding debt service rate of 0, is 3.39% higher than the rolled back rate of 5.882 mills computed pursuant to section 200.0651 Florida statutes.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Do I have a recommendation?
Superintendent recommends approval of resolution number 2019-26 of the School Board of Volusia County, Florida, levying the tentative ad valorem property tax millage rate for the fiscal year 2019-2020, required local effort prior period adjustment, discretionary operating, additional operating for the general fund, district discretionary local capital improvement for capital funds, and debt service for the district debt service funds on all taxable property within Volusia County, Florida for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019 and ending June 30th, 2020.
Again, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. And again, that total millage rate would be 6.081.
Yes.
All right, you've heard the recommendation from the superintendent. Do I have a motion to approve this tentative budget? Proposed budget, I should say. Thank you, Ms. Wright. Second?
Second.
Second, and Mr. Cologne. Further discussion. Just wanted to say that as you look through it, and Deb, if you could check my figures before the next hearing, but it looks like 1 mill generates close to $30 million in Volusia County. And if that is true, then that would mean that 1/3 of a mill, 0.333, would equal about $10 million. And $10 million is exactly what we lose every year, or, you know, when I'm saying we generate less each year due to the DCD. And it just would be nice if we had the option to perhaps consider one day going to the public for a millage operating fund increase for the pure notion of just offsetting what we don't get. And that millage rate would likely drop every year as taxable values go up every year. Let's hope they do. And it would just be such a small amount of money per household when we figure it out. But please check my figures. I don't want to misspeak up here. Just wanted to throw it out there. We have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed. And the motion for the budget is approved unanimously. Thank you. And our meeting is.
No, we have one more.
Oh.
That was for the tentative tax
Well,
rate,
you know,
actually.
I'm being prompt here. Go ahead. Yes, of course, we have to do this part. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
The School Board of Volusia County, Florida, resolution
Total
number
budget.
2019-27. A resolution of the School Board of Volusia County, Florida, adopting the tentative budget for the fiscal year 2019-2020 for the General Fund, Capital Projects Fund, Debt Service Fund, Special Revenue Food Service Fund, Special Revenue Other Fund, and Internal Service Fund of the School Board of Volusia County, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict therewith, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. Whereas the School Board of Volusia County, Florida is authorized under the Constitution and laws of Florida to levy a tax upon non-exempt real property lying and situated in Volusia County, Florida for public school purposes and adoption of a tentative budget. And whereas the required public notice has been given and the public has been given an opportunity to be heard and to ask questions regarding the tentative budget for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. And whereas all matters required by law pursuant to the adoption of the tentative budget for 2019-2020 have been satisfied. Now therefore be it resolved that the School Board of Volusia County, Florida hereby adopts the tentative budget which contains the following funds and appropriations for the fiscal 2019-2020 fiscal year. Fund General Operating, $534,075,299. Capital Projects, $331,637,684. Debt Service, $29,276,273. Special Revenue Food Service, $38,997,640. Special Revenue Other, $48,731,161. Internal Service, $12,318,908, for a total of $995,036,965.
Thank you.
Mr. Superintendent recommends approval of resolution number 2019-27 of the School Board of Volusia County, Florida, adopting the tentative budget for the fiscal year 2019-2020 for the General Fund, Capital Projects Fund, Debt Service Fund, Special Revenue Fund - Food Service Fund, Special Revenue Fund Other Fund, and Internal Service Fund.
Thank you. And again, that grand total is $995,036,965.
That's correct.
Almost $1 billion. Yes. All right, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cologne, and a second.
Second.
By Ms. Wright. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed. And now we have approved our
Mr.
budget
Chair,
and
how
our
about-
tax rate. Yes.
So real quick, something that came up, if we have an opportunity, and Mr. Egner could probably, there was a news story on Loads of Smile and how we pulled hospital homebound. I don't know if you saw that. If we could get just a quick explanation.
Absolutely.
I spoke to Ms. Gilliland, and she did enlighten me really quick,
Yeah.
and it made sense, but just for the benefit of the public, just let them know that we are not pulling hospital homebound services.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because I know it's been a point of some consideration. Let me start at the top, and I will try to work it through very quickly, and if there's further questions, I know Ms. Gilliland is in the room. The way the process is supposed to work is when a student is assigned to hospital homebound, their services are dictated by a matrix, how they're evaluated and what that service should be. And that could also indicate where that service, might indicate where that service could take place. It also is a budget allocation. So based upon that matrix, an IEP committee working with the parent makes a decision about the number of hours, the location where the services will take place, etc. What we had evolved, and I'm not trying to indicate any bad intention, I'm just saying a past practice began to develop to where at least one service provider, a business, got very used to having Volusia County teachers assigned to it to service kids in this program. In fact, they would advertise it on their website that they had Volusia County teachers. Technically, that's not the way it should operate because the IEP committee gets to make those decisions. So because this tradition evolved, it was almost as if the provider was listing Volusia County teachers as if they were their own on their site, almost as an advertising point, which would attract further customers, so to speak. And what we tried to do was clarify that no site could automatically say teachers would be assigned there, because that is supposed to be determined through the IEP committee. In addition to that, when people got used to that, then there were issues with all the other services that were provided at the center. Again, that's not a criticism. They offered a lot of services. So then when we have very few full-time teachers, most of ours operate at the end of the day and then they go to the students' houses, we only have a couple of full-time people. And that's based on the budget, based on the matrix. So their time was being, in essence, completely scheduled at least one of the centers. And often, other services that came in would cause a shift in the educational program. In other words, it may not have been the priority. You know, something physical therapist had come in and so suddenly education got bumped, and that meant that teacher was spending a lot of time but not doing the service that was intended. So there are 4 of these centers. 2 of them had none of our students. 1 had 1 and 1 had 13, and that was the one that was concerned. So the intent of the action was to make it clear that no provider, no business could count on knowing that X number of Volusia County teachers would always be assigned there and use that in advertising, and that the decision as to whether someone would be assigned there as another appropriate location would be purely a decision worked out through the parent, the IEP committee, what the matrix would allow. In some cases, because it had become sort of a tradition or a past practice, there was a feeling that the service could have been administered at a less restrictive site, but it had become such a norm, it was really hard to break the habit. So I think it's a clarification not to assume, but it also doesn't preclude. It could still happen, but it would have to happen in the correct process with the IEP committee taking the lead, not because someone advertised and say, hey, bring your student here. And that's a very rough, quick review of that, and I'm sure that Ms. Gillen can offer greater detail if you require it.
We're good for me? Good? Okay, thank you. Any other comments, concerns? Then we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we sign?
You can't leave